Okay, we will call to order this meeting of the Washoe County School District Board of Trustees for January 29th. And will the clerk please call the roll?
I will. Jacqueline Calvert. Here. Andrew Cosmo. Here. Katie Simon Holland.
Here.
Scott Kelly is on his way. Ella Minetto.
Yes, here.
In honor of John Molina, like Galena Raymond.
Here.
And Angie Taylor, I am here. And our student is not joining us as of yet, but possibly later. Okay, fantastic. And Madam President, we do have a quorum.
Thank you. And Trustee Kelly will be here shortly. And we can all congratulate him on the birth of his son, Adam. So, yes, and give our condolences to his wife for the 9.5-pound baby she delivered. But everybody's happy and healthy. Yeah.
Fantastic. Everybody's good?
Everybody's good. Okay. For our Pledge of Allegiance, CFO Mark Mathers, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Mathers, who's been doing a great job at our community budget forum, so thank you for that. Our next item is public comment.
Jeff Church.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I've been gone. I just got back last night, matter of fact. Yes, my name is Jeff Church. I run a website, renotaxrevolt.com. I invite you to take a look. It does address many Washoe County School District issues. It's been recently updated, and there's 3 specific issues on there that deal with Washoe County. I may have to redo that because I understand since I wrote those articles that you have finally filled the auditor position for chief auditor. However, in there, I do urge you to consider moving forward with an internal auditor for capital projects, as has been promised for a long, long time. We have $200 million high schools that far exceeded the estimate of $130 million or $120 million that we were given previously. We have Washoe County sales tax for WC1 that brings in $200 million a year, yet there's been no audit of capital projects in recorded history. There's no capital projects auditor, and we need one. Tom Doyle, the chair of the audit committee, of the Washoe County School District Audit Committee, spoke on the record a few months ago urging you to get an internal auditor for capital projects. So you have your own audit committee chair wanting an auditor for this. Now, waste, fraud, abuse, and misspending happens. It happens nationwide. It can happen. So we can't have our heads in the sand and think that it can't happen here. And I'm sure that they can find some cost savings along the line. Now, many school districts, including Los Angeles, actually have what's called an inspector general. And I like that idea. It actually goes beyond a simple auditor, and I don't want to refer to them as bean counters, but auditors have an important part. But an inspector general has broader investigative powers, so that's something you should look at. So once again, I'm back. I hope to speak to you again on future issues of importance to the school district. Please check out the website, and I will change that to reflect that there is now, as I understand it, a new chief auditor. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Church.
John Appolito.
Mr. Appolito, welcome.
Thank you. My name is John Appolito. I'm the president of Protect Nevada Children. I have 3 kids left in the district. I wanted to talk about I sent you guys an email this morning, and I also posted that email on our Facebook page, Protect Nevada Children. And in that email, Michelle Malkin is talking about the right to know. And what she's talking about is parents should have the right to know what data is being mined on their children and how it's used, and they should have the right to say no. So that's in your email and on our Facebook page. If you don't like Michelle Malkin, here's an article from the New York Times that talks about the same thing. Kids shouldn't have to sacrifice privacy for education. And here's a quote from the article. Quote, tech companies should not be permitted to collect data on children and profile them using their personal data without parent or guardian's meaningful consent to the data collected. End quote. That's exactly what's happening, and many school board members don't know about it, but you guys do, and you haven't done anything yet. Hopefully with the new board members that'll change. Second quote from that article: concerns over legitimate sharing of and access to student data have been raised by parent groups, consumer watchdogs, and privacy advocates, many of whom have begun public awareness campaigns and legal battles. They're rightfully worried, for example, about the fairness of college admissions processes that rely on student data profiles shared by personal learning companies. End quote. It's actually worse than that. We don't know how these profiles that are being created on our children are going to affect their future. Another quote: laws in the United States offer students very little digital privacy or security protection against the wiles of the industry. And that's true. It's interesting to note that one of the authors of this article is also the founder of Common Sense Media, who is largely funded by Bill Gates and Zuckerberg. I guess Gates wants to be on both sides of this issue because he's all for collecting this data and sharing it with us. Michelle Malkin, if you don't like Michelle Malkin or the New York Times, there is another, a bunch of articles in Time last week or this week. Tim Cook talks about the same thing that Michelle Malkin talks about, and I have copies of those for you here. And Tim Cook writes, quote, the right to knowledge, to know what data is being collected and why, end quote. This is exactly what Protect Nevada Children has been asking you people for several years. Educate parents on all aspects of these free third-party vendors and let them decide. It's way too late already, and I'd like you to enter this into the record, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ippolito. And just for the benefit of the newer trustees, when the trustees adopted our technology policy not long ago, we did specifically ask that a component of the technology policy and plan include educating and informing parents about our technology uses. So we have been responsive, and I did provide that information to Mr. Ippolito. Anyone else?
That's all at this time.
Thank you, JJ. Is there anyone else here who wanted to make public comment generally, not on a specific agenda item? Okay, great. We will move forward then. Thank you. Our next item is action to adopt the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve? Thank you. Motion by Dr. Taylor.
I'll second that.
Second by Trustee Caudill. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, then we are on to our consent agenda. I did want to call trustees' attention to item 2.16, which is consideration of approval of the changes and appointments to the Safe and Healthy Schools Commission. And we do have two of our proposed appointees in the audience. If they would please stand, and they're welcome to say something if they would like to. Coretta Patterson and Leanne McCauley. And we thank you so much for your service and appreciate that. Would either of you like to say anything? You're certainly welcome to, but you don't have to.
I'm fine.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Can I just say thank you? I have 5
Could
kids.
you come? I'm sorry, we have to have it on the record. Thank you, Ms. McCulley.
No problem. I just want to say thank you. My background is in risk management insurance and has been for 20 years. I currently have 5 kids in 4 different schools in the Washoe County School District. So I definitely think that I can add some perspective while also making sure that all the students of Washoe County are protected. So
Great.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Welcome aboard, and thank you very much, both of you, for volunteering for this important commission. We really value the work of our commissions, and this one in particular is hugely important. So thank you for that. We have public comment on the consent agenda, JJ.
John Ippolito.
Thank you. John Ippolito, Protect Nevada Children, former K-12 teacher. On 2.14, it's almost $100,000, and it's going to some company called Social Policy Research Associates. Just the name is problematic. I don't know. To me, you could hire 3 teachers, 2.5 teachers with that money, so I'm not really sure what that's for. We can't teach cursive. We can barely teach keyboarding. We're teaching math that would confuse Einstein, but we could spend $100,000 for Social Policy Research Associates. I have no idea why. And Mrs. President, I don't know what you're talking about. I saw an email I have 3 kids in the school, and no one has ever informed me anything about the third-party vendors, the data they're collecting, how it's being used. It's a bunch of words, but I haven't seen anything. Thank you.
Kristen or anyone, do you want to respond on item 2.14? This is evaluation that's required. Oh, David, okay. Thank you.
So, David Lasik, Chief of Staff, for the record. It's a requirement of the turnaround grant that we have an evaluative service. So it's actually grant funded as part of the turnaround grant from the Nevada Department of Education.
And just for everybody's information, the turnaround grant is a specific grant allocation for schools that are qualifying as turnaround schools. And so the Department of Education, State Department of Education, provides us funding to work with those turnaround schools, and then provides us funding to evaluate the effectiveness of whether those programs are working. So that's what that's for. Are there any other questions about the consent agenda from any? Yes, Vice President Raymond?
Sorry, I was just prepared to make a motion.
And we did get some great answers from staff that, JJ, as always, you'll make part of the record. Okay. If I don't hear any questions, then Vice President Raymond.
I move to approve consent agenda items 2.02 through 2.16.
Is there a second? Second. Motion by Vice President Raymond, second by Clerk Dr. Taylor. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, that will take us to legislative items. 3.01, presentation and discussion of the priorities of Washoe County School District for the 2019 legislative session based on the approved 2019 district legislative platform, to include such items as pre-filed bills that could impact the district, and Governor Sisolak's State of the State address related to educational matters, for information and discussion only. So this is not an action item, but I know Lindsay welcomes the discussion. So Lindsay Anderson.
Thank you, Madam President. Again, Lindsay Anderson, Government Affairs Director. This is my first time presenting to our new trustees in a formal setting, so this is sort of exciting for me. I'm here today to talk about the upcoming legislative session. It starts on Monday. I was just down in Carson City this morning, actually, and they're doing active budget hearings, so there's a lot of people around, and sort of the energy and excitement are building. So I'm just going to give you, there's only a couple of slides. I want to talk about other things that may interest you that I didn't include, but one thing I wanted to call your attention to at the beginning is, I believe included in your packet is a copy of the 2019 legislative platform that was adopted by the board in December of 2018. So this will give you a flavor of what we share with our elected officials about the primary objectives of the Washoe County School District during this upcoming legislative session. And then, I'm not sure if this was included, but I think you've heard us talk about the Invest in Education document, which is a collaborative legislative platform between the school board, the school boards from around the state, and also the superintendents from around the state jointly adopt this legislative platform. So these are 2 guiding documents that really we hand out early on in the session to give everyone an idea of what our priorities are going into this legislative session.
And does anybody need a copy of that Invest document? Do you all have them, or does anyone need one? We don't have it today, but I think some of you have been provided. If you want one, just let us know, and we'll make sure you get one. It's a great document. Mm-hmm.
There's a 1-pager on it too. If all the pages are a little overwhelming, there's a lot of content, and then there's the full document. So we have both of those, and sometimes the 1-pager gives you a few talking points you can kind of have in your head when you literally are in the elevator with people in the building and they ask you what your priorities are. It's easy to be able to rattle them off. So I just wanted to quickly start with, we had the State of the State address a couple of weeks ago, which was an exciting moment to hear from our new governor for the first time. He talked about education being his #1 priority, and then he talked a little bit about things that are included in his budget that were new items that we hadn't heard of that were prepared in Governor Sandoval's budget. So you heard him talk about the first time to have a state-funded cost of living increase or a raise for teachers in about 12 years. That's, again, money that would be included in the state budget for that purpose. You also heard him mention the $8 million for the Washoe County School District, and he was very clear about it being a one-time appropriation and making sure that we didn't get into the situation again where we were correcting errors after the fact. He talked a lot about school safety and infrastructure. In fact, he recognized a counselor from Clayton Middle School for the work that she does every day in preventing school violence. So that was a nice tribute to her and our district during the State of the State address. He talked a lot about career and technical education, increasing opportunities for all students and increasing funding in that area, and then increasing funding for the teacher supply reimbursement account. So that was, in his about 50-minute speech, he spent a lot of time on education, and I think that's a good sign to his commitment to us going forward. He also talked about including, I guess he didn't talk about, but other things that are in the budget that we've seen so far are money to address roll-ups and inflationary costs, increased categorical funding for things like Read by 3, the weighted funding, which is the $1,200 for our lowest performing students, and some additional sort of a gap funding for pre-K to make up for a federal grant that the state is losing in offering pre-K services. He also talked about the marijuana money. I am sure you guys do, but I get this question like once a week, more than I would have ever expected about where's the money going. So in this sense, the retail tax on marijuana, which is the 10% tax that was not included in the ballot question, he is proposing that instead of going into the rainy day fund would be largely used for school safety initiatives, both the physical infrastructure as well as sort of mental health and preventative services. So that's largely out of a task force that was created over the interim in which Superintendent Davis sat on, and our school police chief Trevino and our counseling director were part of making recommendations about the school safety. Just a little bit about the legislature. Both houses went from Democratic controlled to more Democratic controlled. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of context of how many people there are and what we're looking at in terms of people. The 2 seats to be appointed from Clark County were appointed in the time between this was submitted and today. So those seats have been filled. I have to mention, I guess, that it's the first female majority legislature in the history of the country. So for me, I guess that's exciting to be part of that historical event. And then you can see a little bit about the assembly side there. They do have the Democrats have a supermajority in the assembly, so they have 2/3 of their members in the assembly, and there's 14 true freshmen. And that might not mean a lot to you all, but that means those are 14 people that have never seen me before that we're going to really have to build some rapport, including some teachers and people that will be on the education committee. So it's a lot of new faces. A little bit about the legislative leadership in both houses there. Part of what I talk about on this slide is there's not technically a person from Washoe County on that slide, which can be a challenge, but that doesn't mean that they don't understand our issues and we don't have relationships with all 4 of those gentlemen. The Washoe County landscape, so you can see a little bit here about the Washoe County. We have 2 new legislators. I would call them truly new. And then Senator Hansen is making the switch from the Assembly side to the Senate side. So I guess he's a new senator, but I'm not sure we can call him a new legislator at this point. And then we do have, obviously, Assemblywoman Teresa Benitez Thompson is the Assembly Majority Leader, and she'll be a critical resource for us during this legislative session. And then both of the chairs of the Health and Human Services Committee are from Washoe County. And that will be important to us, too. There's a surprising amount of things that go through the Health and Human Services Committee that impact us. A lot of the mental health professionals and the Department of Health and Human Services budget does have an impact, Medicaid, on school district operations. So it will be nice to have those 2 strong Washoe legislators in those chairmanship roles. Just a little bit about the timeline. As I mentioned, starts Monday. Those the committee passage deadlines are important because if bills don't make it past there, they die. And a lot of times you don't feel the pressure until the very end. And so if we have board meetings around those dates, you could probably not expect to see me around then because it gets particularly crazy and they push a lot of things through at the very last second. But it'll kind of give you an idea of where the pressure points will be during this legislative session. And then, we're shooting for the finish date of June 3rd. So that's our long-term goal. Really quickly, this is the last slide about the sample of pre-filed bills. We have a little bit more now. They're kind of every day they drop a few more, so we get a little bit more insight. Obviously, Assembly Bill 57 is the bill from the previous Lieutenant Governor about appointed school boards. So obviously that's something you all will be interested in. In fact, I think another one from Senator Keyhover was published yesterday, so I haven't had a chance to really dig into that one, but we know that's going to be a topic of conversation. Neil's favorite, the open meeting law legislation, so obviously that's important to our trustees. Charter schools, teacher licensure. A lot of these early bills are from the executive branch, so the Department of Education pre-files a lot of their bills, so we get a chance to see what those are. I guess it's a good time to mention how we're going to have a change in leadership at the Department of Ed, and that'll probably have a significant impact on the bills that they had previously filed and sponsored, and see where those go as we look for a new state superintendent of public instruction. But the pre-K legislation, that's an important one for us because there's a nexus there to the budget. And then obviously school safety, which I heard this morning actually has already been scheduled for a hearing. So we haven't even started yet, and we're getting bills scheduled. So I'm here to answer questions or concerns that you may have or have a discussion. We do, in past practice, have a standing agenda item on the Board of Trustees agenda for just these sort of regular updates. You'll also get some written summary information from me on a weekly basis, kind of about what happened last week and what we expect to be coming up the following week. And, obviously I'm always available to answer questions through the superintendent. And I don't know if she wants to add anything or say anything about this upcoming session, but that's the conclusion of my report. So It'll be fun.
Thank you, Lindsay. Sure. I'm glad you're in that job because you do think it's fun. So we appreciate it. Do you want to say anything? Oh, go ahead. Oh, Dr. Taylor, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam President. Hi, Lindsay. My question is, can you talk a little bit about the open meeting law bill? I hadn't heard of that one yet.
Sure. So the Attorney General's office actually pre-filed this bill, and again, this is one of those instances where we're going to have a different Attorney General in the role than we had that filed the piece of legislation. So I don't want to oversell that the new Attorney General is going to pick it up and run with it. But it's my understanding, and certainly our legal counsel can weigh in, but generally the things that are included in that bill are things that we're already doing. So we're not expecting a big significant impact. So Neil, I don't know if you had anything to add, but basically it's something that we could adopt easily, and it could be part of our existing infrastructure.
Did you want to add anything, Soup?
So, Lindsay, I want to talk about the 3% because you said 3% teachers. Is there a clarification? Was it specifically for teachers or employees of the school districts? Because we keep hearing.
I don't want to put words in his mouth and what's in the budget. We're still really kind of going through the budget with a fine-tooth comb about what money is actually in there. I believe the intention is for district employees. Not necessarily only teachers, but I think there's a little gray area there. And obviously that process has to go through the collective bargaining process. This is just about what's in the state's budget. The contract or the negotiation we do with our teachers will happen here at the local level.
Thank you.
Okay. Any questions from trustees? Yes, Trustee Caudill.
Thank you. As a new trustee, I'm grateful that you take on this task because it keeps us in the loop. I'm curious on if there's any details on what is going to be included when we're talking career and technical. Are we talking new program funding? Are they going to say, hey, here's this money, but you have to spend it on this? What are we talking about, if you know?
So my understanding, just again from the State of the State address, is that Governor Sisolak intends to put an additional $1 million into the existing career and technical education category or grant program, I guess, as it is. Whether we would get a share of that money. To my knowledge, there's not a policy bill that would require it to be spent on any particular item, but it's a little early to say that that's not coming. So right now we're only talking about increasing additional funds for those programs, not necessarily which programs they are at this point.
And I believe, Lindsay, there was at the State of the State mention of 1,200 more slots for CTE students, which is not much.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what the math is behind that, because my understanding
that was the number, wasn't it?
Yeah,
that
I think
he
so.
mentioned? Yeah.
it's not funded on like a per pupil basis like that. So I'm sure there was sort of what's the average cost of providing programming divided by the number of students that it could serve. So, and I'm sure that's wildly different between a welding program and a business program. So I'm not sure exactly how they got to that number, but I do know the total number was an additional $1 million, which I think is taking it from $2 million to $3 million in the budget.
Okay, thank you. Yep, Trustee Kelly.
Thank you, Madam
And
President.
congratulations again. We congratulated you when you weren't here, so congratulations on Adam's arrival.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, he's doing great. Mom's doing great, so
Good.
appreciate it.
Good.
Lindsay, quick question on when do we get an understanding of when during the legislature are bills going to be seen as either funded or unfunded? I mean, is that something that the bill says right at the front, this is going to be funded this way, or do we not know that until further down when the committees start to really allocate funding for them or not?
Both, I guess I would say. I mean, there is sort of a matching process that goes on, like in pre-K, for example. We know there's an appropriation for pre-K, and we know there's a policy bill about pre-K, and so we know those things have a nexus, even though they may happen on two different tracks. Bills that are introduced now that include an unfunded mandate at the local or the state level include a special sort of marking that indicate it's an unfunded suggestion or policy idea. We also get the opportunity to submit what are called fiscal notes. I'm sure you know, basically where a new piece of legislation is introduced, we as the district get the opportunity to weigh in on what we think it will cost or save the district if that bill was passed as is. So the policy bills that get a fiscal note end up having to go through the money committees where they'll have that discussion about what it costs. It's not a perfect match many times, so it's a little bit of a puzzle putting those things together, but I would say it's happening now, and it really happens at the end.
Other questions for Lindsay? And certainly any of the trustees who would like to go to Carson to see any of the hearings or whatever, please work with Lindsay. We always want to make sure that we know when we're there and that we're unified in our approach to the legislature, and that Lindsay's fully in the loop. So I know she would welcome anybody who's interested to see the process. And it's been my experience that less is more. The less we're there, the more impact we have when we are. So she'll call on us to help her when she needs to, and she is a trusted pro and very well respected in the legislature. So we're really lucky she's on our team. Okay. All right. Well, thanks, Lindsay. Good luck. Sleep in this weekend because this is it. Yeah, that's right. And your kids, will look different when this session's over. All right. Thanks, Lindsay. All right. Next up, our CFO, Mr. Mathers, and Mike Schroeder, our budget director, with an update and discussion of the 2019-20 fiscal year budget, including a status update. Welcome, gentlemen. And I have to say, Mike, your name was being used in vain at the Nevada Association of School Boards meeting this weekend, teaching trustees about school board finance. That you're one of the guys still in the job who knows where all of that money comes from and where all of it goes. So we're lucky you're here. All right, thanks.
So thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I'll let Mike kind of go through a little quick status update on the budget, and then we'll do a dive into kind of a single issue that we have for you today.
Okay.
Thanks, Mark. Good afternoon, President Simon Holland, Superintendent Davis, members of the board. I guess that all that really says is that I'm getting kind of old.
I didn't want to make it sound that way, Mike, but
It's like, is that guy still around?
We're glad you are.
So anyway, we started our fiscal year 1920, I'd call it FY20 budget process back in September. I know some of you weren't here then, but the existing board members raised some ideas and questions about what we might do for the fiscal year 2019-20 budget. And today we're going to give you an update on that. And just, these aren't the only things we've been working on since September. I want to be clear about that. We've done a lot of work on priority-based budgeting. We have some results from that. We intend to get really heavy into that in our February 26th budget workshop. We conducted a budget survey. We have results from that. We're doing budget forums right now, a lot of trustees have attended those already. We started last Thursday. And some of those results from the budget survey and the priority-based budgeting have been mentioned at those workshops. But today we want to talk about these specific items and give you an update on those. One of them was reviewing different approaches to allocations to close achievement gaps. We really start our allocations process in February, and we'll try to devise some different ways working with academics to say, are there ways we can do this and hopefully be cost neutral. But we'll have to report back to you after we do some of that work in February. We talked about high school transportation, mainly for athletics, and if they could redo regions. I think Trustee Mayer talked towards that, and it was kind of something they were already had kind of done when they look at how they devise leagues and put teams into different leagues. But we'll confirm that and make sure we update you on that. We talked about examining costs to see if we could charge them to bond funds. Mark has done a lot of work on that, and he'll talk about that today and what we can do in that regard. Looking at contracted services as a way we could do those in-house or cut those type of costs instead of employees. We've done a pretty broad examination of that. We haven't quite completed it. Should have that to you, if not by the 12th meeting, by the February 26th workshop. We're also looking at take-home vehicles, which we'll report to you on February 26th, and what the possibility of raising an athletic transportation fee might look like. So I'll turn it over to Mark now to kind of talk about what we can do with the bond funds.
Thank you, Mike. So we did receive a question from the board asking us to look to bond funds and whether there were any other costs we might allocate to those funds, which was a really good question. We'd started looking at this issue, but around the same time, actually, but it was, it's a great question. One thing we do really want to make clear, though, is that we can't just move costs out of the operating budget into our capital budgets or in our capital funds without being incredibly careful. There are legal restrictions that prevent us from inappropriately allocating operating costs that don't have a nexus to capital projects. We don't want to do that. As you know, we have a capital funding protection committee whose existence really is to prevent that from happening. So we want to be very careful and thoughtful and certainly within legal bounds when we look at that, first of all. So we did start looking at the Government Services Tax Fund, and to explain to you and the public, the Government Services Tax is a piece, a sliver of the vehicle registration fee you pay every year for vehicles. And so you'll see a line that says actually Government Services Tax on there, and that tax is collected by the DMV when they receive your motor vehicle fees. It is sliced and diced to a number of entities, part to the state, part to cities and counties, and part to the school district. And the part to the school district actually comes in two different streams. One stream of GST, or government services taxes, we receive goes to the general fund. So we receive about $17 million in the general fund from the GST tax, the government services tax. And then there is a second stream of government services tax revenues we receive, and that is required, as noted here in this slide, NRS 387, to be deposited to a capital projects fund. So they are distinct and different, and they can only, one can be used for operating costs in the general fund, and the other is restricted, as you can see here, to capital projects. And NRS 387.328 references NRS 387.355 in terms of very specifically outlining eligible uses of those monies. And they, by and large, include capital projects, but also motor vehicles. So that's kind of the background to this particular fund. And I should say as well, I should note to you in that second sub-bullet point that it is a capital projects fund, but that fund can also be used to pay for debt service. So it's a little unusual in that regard. So our current practice for financing fleet, you recall I was here earlier in the month to the board about how we finance fleet. We use kind of a rolling 4-year process of issuing medium-term notes to pay for both buses and what we call white fleet, that can include maintenance vehicles, take-home vehicles, any number of other kinds of equipment, rolling fleet. And that's been the historical practice. That debt service has been paid by the general fund for many, many years. And so for fiscal year 19, we had budgeted $2.6 million for debt service out of the general fund for fleet debt service that included fiscal year 18, 16, 15 transactions. So what we are here to propose to you today is, instead of paying for fleet debt service out of the general fund, we think we found a way to charge that to the government services tax fund, thereby saving the general fund that $2.6 million. This is, as we went over in the IRS, completely legal. I believe there are other agencies that do this, and we're fortunate that financially we can afford to do this without any impact on our use of capital monies out of that fund. So we're not going to harm or decrease the amount of monies we spend on capital projects out of the GST fund by doing this.
That's excellent.
And so, again, this came about just an analysis of the fund and what we might be able to do. This is maybe a little bit hard to read, but we went back over time, back to 2015 fiscal year, and we looked at, on average, how much we've actually spent out of the GST fund for capital projects. And in that second to the right-hand column, you can see we've historically spent $2.3 million of capital projects out of the GST fund. You'll note we also have an allocation of personnel to that fund, and those are folks who work on smaller capital projects. Myself and Pete Etchart and his staff went through that listing of staff. There are a couple positions that we think are more appropriately allocated to the general fund. This is something we do annually with WC1 funds and as well as GST. So there will actually be a couple positions we're going to allocate back to the general fund in fiscal year 20. But what this pro forma cash flow is trying to show you is that we've had enough growth in the GST fund, and as you can see, revenues are increasing double digits per year. But we've had enough growth in that fund that we can accommodate the debt service for fleet, pay for the $2.3 million in capital projects that we historically on average have spent, and then pay for the vast majority of personnel costs that are currently allocated to that fund. So there, again, there's no detriment here to what we spend on capital projects out of the fund, and yet we can now allocate debt service away from the general fund to the GST fund, saving the general fund $2.5 million or so.
Excellent. And I see you have the notation that the fund balance was almost $7.5 million with revenues of $4 million and a fund balance of $7.5 million. That's a pretty healthy fund balance. So it's a great idea to do this. I also see the note that it doesn't include transfers out in previous years. So what are typical transfers out for?
Well, we don't. Thank you, Madam President. Mark Mathers, we don't do those anymore. I believe they were budget maneuvers to assist the general fund in years past. We haven't done them for the last 3 fiscal years. I think the last fiscal year we did that was fiscal year 15. So it was, I think reallocating costs to balance the budget is my best guess.
Okay, well, that's a great idea. Any other questions on this piece? Mr. Caudill.
Through the budget process, the estimated deficit that we're looking at, has this always been factored into that, this savings that has been found for the general fund?
No, sir. Historically, again, the district always paid for its fleet debt service out of the general fund and never used the GST fund for that purpose, at least as far back as I went. So I hope I'm answering your question, but basically our deficit included the fact that we were paying for fleet debt service out of the general fund. This will help our deficit to the tune of $2.5 million.
So our future projected deficit for next year, that has not been factored into the projections. until moving forward we will do that, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Let's just make sure we're all on the same page with that. So the projected $10-ish million deficit is still 10-ish million. It's not 7.5.
Correct. And I've used that number very loosely.
Yes.
We are still looking at the state's budget. We have serious questions about the level of funding in the state budget. It could easily be, and I think it could easily be more than $10 million. But that does not include this maneuver. However, when we come to you in February, assuming you're okay with this concept, we will build that into the budget, and so our deficit will be $2.5 million less than it otherwise would have been.
Okay. More to follow.
Yes.
As the kids say in text, MTF. Okay.
Is that what it means? Okay.
Well, that's what it means to me. Are there any other questions on that? Okay, well, I appreciate these regular updates on those things that we asked about because it helps us to, get it in a smaller bite so we can assimilate all this very complicated information about the budget. So thank you, and great to see that this is at least going to help the general fund. So wonderful news. Okay, any questions? All right, thank you, gentlemen. Okay. Do we want to take care of other things before we move to the next item, which is the continuation, since they're not here?
Oh, yeah. Are they going to show up?
Chris, do you know if the cantors are coming? Because I'm thinking we may want to take care of the business for people that are here and defer that item to later in the agenda.
Well, good afternoon. For the record, my name is Christopher Reich, Deputy Chief General Counsel, President Simon Holland. I have not heard from the cantors at all, so
okay.
I don't know.
With the board's support and with your agreement, let's move that to later in the agenda and take care of the business for the people who are present so we don't have them waiting for us in a closed session again. Of course, this is the open session. What's your pleasure, board? Would you?
And just to remind everybody, there was the complaint hearing that took place on January 15th under 241 and 288, and there was a hearing on the matter in the agenda, and there was deliberation, and the board voted to bring the vote to this meeting. And right now, an open session is just a vote to accept the superintendent's recommendation or not. So.
Well, I guess I would ask my colleagues, are you all ready to vote on that item? Okay, well then let's go ahead. We'll go ahead and open that item. So 5.01 is the continuation of agenda item 3.02 from the meeting of the Board of Trustees on January 15th, 2019. As Mr. Reich said, discussion and possible action pursuant to paragraph 12.8.3.8 of the Washoe Education Association Collective Bargaining Agreement to deny or grant the appeal of Lenise Cantor and Daniel Cantor's appeal of non-payment compensation of additional work reportedly done after the certified contract day of 12 June 2018. And I just want to remind trustees that the reason that we had, and the public, the reason that we had continued this is to give folks time on the board to read the documents that we were handed at that meeting. So I hope everybody's had a chance to read through those. So Chris, I let you introduce whatever you'd like to say, and then we can return it to the board.
As representing a district, the district has nothing to say, and it's up to you to take a vote on what you believe is the right thing to do here.
Okay. Trustees, do you have any questions for Mr. Reich or anyone else on the staff at this point? Okay. I think I'd like to at least open it up and have trustees have a discussion before we have a motion made, if you're all okay with that. And maybe trustees can talk about.
I would just caution President Simon Holland, Chris Reich for the record. Any discussion should be very limited in this matter, and board counsel can tell you, because we were talking about character and items like that, which are reasons why we had it in a closed session to begin with. So just be cautious about the discussion.
Thank you for that good reminder. I do still think, Council, that board members do have the prerogative to, without talking about character and competence, talk about facts that are the basis of their vote. Is that?
Yeah, I think that's accurate. Just stay out of the character issues and stay on why you're doing what you're doing. So.
Okay. Okay. Is there any trustee that would like to make any comments before we have a motion? Mr. Cotto?
Yeah, based on the documentation provided, I did not see anything that proved that this promise was made of payment. So it's hard for us to make a determination that a promise was made without seeing documented proof that that promise was made. So I don't see how we can award this dollar figure, or else we would just kind of open the district up to verbal contracts which really don't hold up.
Okay. Thank you. Dr. Taylor?
Thank you, Madam President. I was just going to add, just similarly, I didn't see anything that made it clear that there was a promise to pay. I do, and certainly in the cancer's defense, I think it was clear to me that they really had the expectation. I don't think they made it up, by any means like that. I didn't get that idea. I really do think that they certainly had the expectation, but unfortunately, I just didn't see the documentation for me, and it makes it a difficult decision because, again, I know that I believe that they had the expectation, but somewhere along the way, the documentation just wasn't there.
Okay. Any others? And similarly, I after reviewing all of the material, certainly I am in agreement that there are no artifacts, there are no emails, there is no corroborating evidence that a promise to pay was made. I think there was an expression which is corroborated that I'll look into it, but there was not a confirmation of a promise. So I will, if there's no other comments, let's have a motion. Go ahead.
I move that the Board of Trustees denies the appeal of Linus Cantor and Danielle Cantor.
Okay, motion by Trustee Calvert, second by Trustee Minetto. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, trustees, for taking that extra time to look at that. Appreciate it.
I do think it's important to note that I appreciate we had that time, and I get the indication from the active listening from our colleagues that we all took the time to read through it, and I think it was important to give full consideration. And so I appreciate my colleagues for joining me in that effort.
And likewise. And I know these are tough. There's a lot to consider, but yes, we appreciate it, and I certainly know the word is out that we will continue to look for physical evidence of agreements that are made. Okay, we'll move on. Item 5.02, presentation. Thank you, Chris. Presentation, discussion, and possible action to approve the recommendation of the Textbook Advisory Committee to purchase the following K-5 English Language Arts instructional materials, grades K-1, Fountas and Pinnell, and grades 2 to 5 Benchmark Advance for the total approximate amount of $4,970,856 over fiscal years 2019 and 2020. And here with us to review our Chief Academic Officer, Deborah Beiersdorf, and Director of Curriculum and Instruction, Kendra Fox. And thank you, ladies. And I know we have shared with you, Deborah, some of the emails we've received, and I know you'll be prepared to respond to those. So thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, President Simon Holland, Superintendent Davis, and members of the board. Again, I am Deborah Beiersdorf. I'm the Chief Academic Officer, and joining me today is our amazing Director of Curriculum and Instruction, Kendra Fox. We do have some guests in the audience that Kendra is going to introduce to you in just a moment. As you saw in our board report and the materials that we've submitted to you, we're here today to request your approval for the purchase of curriculum materials for English language arts for grades K through 5, kindergarten through 5th grade. And Kendra's going to walk you through the very thorough process that has happened over the course of just about a year. That has involved many stakeholders within the district community and the larger community as well. So I'm very proud of the work that Kendra and the entire team have done that has gotten us to you this afternoon. So again, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Debbie. President Simon Holland, Superintendent Davis, members of the board, Kendra Fox for the record. I'm the Director of Curriculum Instruction. Before I get started, I would like to introduce Stacy Drum, who is the K-5 ELA program facilitator, and Ellen Badger, who is the textbook adoption facilitator in the curriculum instruction department, and they helped lead the process and did all of the really hard work. I just get to share it with you up here.
Well, thank you. Thank you all for your hard work.
So textbook adoption or instructional materials adoption is governed by many rules and regulations. To start, it's governed by NRS and Nevada Administrative Code, and also open meeting law. We follow open meeting law for all of the meetings. And then we have board policy and regulation that also guide it, in addition to the Nevada Department of Education's own regulations. So we have a lot of moving parts that we have worked together to create one process for our staff to go through. And this is, I think, the most concise and bulleted list of what the process looks like. It's from our own regulation. Basically, we show that we need a need for a textbook, and we pull together a committee to review the materials. But before they are able to review the materials, we train them. We work with them for a full day in developing a rubric that they will use to evaluate all the materials that have come in. We talk about the standards and really spend a lot of time looking at what is the latest research in whatever the content area is before we embark on looking at materials. We then put out an RFP, so all vendors that want to submit are able to submit. That RFP is pretty specific for the things that we as Washoe need. Since we've been adopting textbooks again, we've always asked for an online component in addition to a paper copy. So we can start that transition of having some electronic resources and paper resources as we move forward into the 21st century. With that, the committee then comes in on their own time. It takes about 15 to 20 hours of their own time to come in, depending on how many programs are submitted, to review all of the programs submitted. They look through every item on the rubric. They look at standards alignment, whether the program is good for EL students, whether the assessments that come along with the program are balanced. They look at whether the stories may be appropriate for our students. Really and we shared the copies of the rubric with you in the document, so you can kind of see how extensive they were. After all of the committee members have reviewed the materials, we pull them back together for a whole group meeting where they take all of their evidence and they evaluate that evidence and try to come up with a smaller list. I think there was 8 to 10 programs this last time, and they narrowed it down after the first go around to 3. And so that's the goal, then to narrow it down into semifinalists at that point. Then at that point, we send the teachers home with lessons to teach out of those semifinalists books, so they can really see how these materials work with kids, and bring back the feedback. During the same time period, we put it out for public review and ask the public to come in and look at the books and give us their feedback also. So with that, then we bring the committee back together for one more time, and we ask them to discuss their findings again. We bring the publishers in at this point to answer any questions that the committee may have. And then hopefully the committee at this point is able to come to a decision. And then after that, we bring it to you for approval, and then we also have to take it to the State Board of Education for approval also. Not the purchase, but the actual books, because they go on an approved list at the state level too. So I kind of worked ahead going through that, but hopefully you got a kind of an overview before I get into the details about this specific adoption. So prior to the economic downturn back in the 2000s, we adopted text every 7 years. So we were on a cycle, elementary math, middle and high school math, ELA, and we just kept going around. Then around somewhere early in the 2000s, the legislature allowed us to have a waiver from purchasing textbooks. So we stopped adopting textbooks for quite a long time. I would say about 10, 7 or 8, somewhere in there years. And so right now we're playing a little bit of catch up because we've only been adopting for a few years. So to give you some context, the last time we adopted K-5 English language arts materials was in 2004. And that was a book by Houghton Mifflin, and schools are still using it today. And so you can imagine how much has changed since 2004 in different standards, you know, a lot of new teaching styles, etc. So to give you a little history then of what we've done since we were able to start adopting again, in 2015 and 2016, we adopted elementary math, and we adopted for K1, we adopted Bridges, and 2.5 in Vision. And I'll talk a little bit more about that split when we're talking about this split also. We also adopted AP and IB science for high school. In and the reason, just so you guys kind of know, the AP, the College Board who governs AP, they require us to adopt every 10 years for their books, so it was a requirement. And science, as you can imagine, changes too. So then in 2016, 2017, we adopted middle school math and AP and IB language arts. And then last school year, we adopted high school mathematics, algebra, all the way through calculus. And then we adopted world language last school year, but we paid for it this school year, right after July 1, similar to what we're asking you to do today with the ELA purchase. Here's some rationale, other than it's been since 2004. We've adopted the Nevada Academic Content Standards since then, different standards, things moved around, and while we in curriculum instruction, in collaboration with lots of other departments from around the school district, have tried to make do as best we can, it really is an outdated program. I don't even believe you can buy the new copies of it's getting to that point to where you can't purchase large amounts of the books anymore. So that's basically the rationale. Then I wanted to give you a little bit of the timeline so you can see the scope of this work in a little more detail than I gave you earlier. So a year ago, as Debbie said, we made a plan to start this adoption. It does truly take more than a year to do because of the length of time it takes the committee members to review all of the materials. And then it takes several months for the state to do their review, because the state goes in and reviews our review and makes sure that what we said is right, and then it has to go to the state board for approval. So it truly does take a year. So January 2018, we really started this. In March of 2018, we sent out the RFP to the publishers and asked for materials. March through April, we asked for applications. We do ask the teachers and the committee members to apply. We do have criteria. They have to be a non-probationary teacher. They can't have any paid work for outside organizations. So if they work for an organization that may provide curricular materials, or they write curriculum on the side for an organization, we can't have them on the committee because it creates a conflict of interest. So we have some criteria about that. We ask them why they want to be on the committee if they know about the time commitment. We also ask for principals to apply to the committee, community members, and parents. So we try to get someone from every category that may want input. After that, we ask them to come for training. The teachers come for a full day. The parents, community members, and parents and community members, they come for, and administrators, they come for a more condensed version of the training because they have a different rubric that they look at. This is a list of the committee members. When we pick the committee, it is a blind selection process, so we don't pick our friends. We don't make any sort of bias. We take the names off the application. We actually have people not on the committee, not associated with curriculum instruction to actually do the review, people that are really knowledgeable about whatever content area is being is being submitted, and ask them to help us narrow down the committee to a reasonable amount. We also try to balance it amongst types of schools and areas of town. So we really have a nice balance of people on the committee in addition to district staff. So we have someone from the English language or the English learner department. We have someone from gifted and talented. We have someone, just trying to look and see who else up there in special roles. We have someone that's a learning strategist, so someone that's their role is assigned to help with literacy. So we try to include those kinds of folks on the committee. Also, in addition to administrators from different types of schools, parents, and then our friends at UNR always send someone to help us with the committee. So, I don't think anyone's here today from the committee, but I would like to publicly thank them because this is an extremely large amount of time that they get very little. I mean, really, it's about thank you for helping the district and your fellow teachers in picking the best instructional materials for students. And so I did want to just say thank you to them for all their hard work in this process.
Madam President, if I may. Thank you, and thank you so much. I know how this is a lot of hard work. Were you just overall, because obviously by names we can't tell, how do you feel about the diversity representation in the committee?
We didn't have someone from the Equity and Diversity Department on the committee, but recently we asked them to come and review all the materials, and we got a full report from them on things we can do curricular-wise to address some concerns, and things also. One of the Benchmark, who's one of the programs, they write a lot of their own text, and so one of the districts that they work with had some concerns. They had a high population of I'm not sure which Native Americans, I think it was, and they didn't have enough text on Native American stories, and so they actually wrote additional stories and put them online. So the company is really willing to work with us if we see things that may be inaccurate or we need more of something. They're willing to work with us to help reach our population. The Equity and Diversity Department spent a lot of time helping us with that part of the project too. So thank you to them.
Yeah, well, thank you.
No problem. In June through September, that's when I said that the committee comes in on their own time in the summer. They come in if you've ever been in our warehouse over at Edison, it is the spookiest place. I don't recommend spending time there on the weekends, but they come and spent all summer in the hot warehouse with us and reviewed all the materials, and it's good fun. And then in September, we brought them back together to create the semifinalist lists. At that time, they narrowed down the list to what you see up there. Fountas and Pinnell was K2, and the reason it was only K2 is because they don't have materials past third grade. They're developing third grade materials, but 4 and 5 were not ready or not available. So we can only review what we have, what is submitted by the RFP, and so that's the list that they narrowed it down to at that point. And then they went out and taught the lessons, gathered feedback from students also. And I can show you what the students responded to in just a minute here. So the teacher had a note taker that they were supposed to use to supply feedback to the committee after they taught each lesson. They answered each of these questions and then brought it back to the whole group. And then the students also were able to supply feedback to the teacher about how they liked the lessons, and they gave it a star rating of 1 to 5 also. We didn't include any of those notes in your packet just because there's a lot, but if you're interested in looking at them, we have all that information. October 4, 5, and 6, we asked for public input. We put notifications in the newspaper, on the district website. We've done radio interviews in the past, but KOH always puts a little blurb on their radio for us to get people to come in. This year we had a record number of people come in. We had 21 people come and participate, which is hard for people to either we do it after hours and on weekends, but it still takes a commitment to come and do it. So we really appreciate the 21 people that have come and offered their opinion about the books. And then we take all of that information and brought it back in November and that was we subbed the teachers out and asked the rest of the committee to come in and spend the day with us on November, and that's when we really just hashed through everything. We brought the publishers in. They gave a 45-minute-ish presentation to the committee, and then the committee could actually ask them questions like, this didn't work for me when I taught the lesson. What was the intention, or what are the materials like this look like? And they really were able to get in the details of some of the programs that they taught sample lessons for. Then after that November 5th date, the committee made a decision to make finalists. At that point, the costs that came in were astronomical, like double our budget. And so Ellen Badger, the textbook facilitator, negotiated with the textbook companies and lowered the price several $1 million for us. She worked with them and really did a nice.
I'm taking you with me next time I buy a car.
Exactly. Really did a nice job of getting the price down, talking about professional development, figuring out exactly what everything would look like, and how, this is our budget, this is what we have to work with, and how can you help us with this? So then in December, we brought the committee back together and asked them to consider all of the new information, because she didn't just work with the 2 finalists, she worked with the rest of the other 2 semifinalists and said, what can you do for us too? So the committee really could consider all 4 of the programs in their new decision making. And historically in textbook adoption, we've never considered price. And the reason for that is that we just truly want the best program for our students. And so we've never looked at price. We've never shared the prices with the teachers, but it's never been a problem before because they've always come in right where we need it to. We've been able to negotiate to make it work. In this case, we were so far out of the budget that we had to bring the committee back together and share the costs with them because it was so far out of the price range. We learned a lot from this time of going through the process, things we may change for future in thinking about price and including that with the committee, but a balance of that and still we want the best program for our students. So this was the decision of the committee, and it truly was a committee decision. I say this all the time. I haven't even looked in detail at the books. We're not allowed to have an opinion in curriculum instruction. We take the committee's decision and we bring it to you for final decision. We know there was some concerns about the split of the 2 programs, and we had those same concerns, but the committee was truly impressed and adamant about Fontes and Pinnell at K1. And I think part of the reason why is we have Fontes and Pinnell intervention kits, and so that I don't know that it swayed anyone's opinion, but they just found such value in the complete program of what Fontes and Pinnell can provide. And Benchmark is a great program, and the grades 2 through 5 were overwhelmingly happy with Benchmark, and so that's what I bring to you as the committee's selection today. And just so before we move too far, I can just kind of share what the next steps would be in a little bit of detail about those next steps. We will take it to, I believe the materials are being sent to the state board or the state Nevada Department of Education for review, and then it will be on a future State Board of Education approval agenda, consent agenda. Next, after if and you give your approval for the purchase, we will work on working to purchase the K2 with this year's funding, and then as soon as funds are available in the next fiscal year, we will purchase 3.5. We did that last year with the math and the world language, and it was pretty smooth. We really didn't have any trouble getting the training and the materials in teachers' hands in times, and the companies worked with us in order to roll out our professional development plan, even though the books weren't, purchased yet. So they were able to create a plan for us with the approval, and the contracts in place. So professional development planning, just in case you have questions about that. One of the things we started doing because of cost, but I think it's really worked out nicely for the teachers and for the staff that has to do the professional development, is we provide at least a full day of professional development sometime in the spring, summer, or early fall. So Our plan right now is to do a week in June right after school's out and a week in July right before school starts. And we feel like we can get all of the currently hired teachers trained at that point. Well, in the past, we've had to pay people stipends for that, which was a big cost. And so what we've been able to do is work with Human Resources and the Teacher Association to give teachers the first day back off of school. That first day, that first teacher day back, they're able to take that day off if they come to the training. If they don't come to the training, they go to training that day. And so then we're able to get everyone trained. If you're a late hire, we'll offer training in August and September, or if you're we always offer training after count day in case you change grade levels. Yeah. So through the math, when we did the K-5 math, we learned a lot of things about how we had to work and make sure we were cognizant of the school's needs. So we forgot about teachers changing grades at the time, so we were like, oh, we need training right after count day for teachers that may move as a result. And so we have a pretty good process in place for professional development, and then between the Department of English Language Development and my department and professional learning, we have plans for ongoing professional development for teachers throughout the school year through the learning strategists and the Blue Fridays and all of the other opportunities that we can provide. We also have a decent sized team. We have four of them to go in and work with schools that need extra support also. Then once we recover from this adoption, we will begin K-5 science, which should be really exciting because that's been, I think, 23 years.
That's been on my radar.
Yes,
I'm so happy to
and thank you
hear
for that because you were the reason why we were able to move it up. So
That's
thank you for
great.
that.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Great
So with
job.
that, I'm ready for some questions.
Wow, great job, and how complex this process is. I can't even imagine all of the work, and I really appreciated the packet because we got to see the rubrics that you all used to evaluate everything. Can't imagine how much time this took, so we are so grateful to folks. And then, as you say, the professional development component, getting everyone up to speed, very important. Before we go into trustee questions, I know, Deborah, we had some questions that came through online, and I know you were prepared to have some comment on that, so let's let you have your comment until before we have other questions.
Sure, absolutely. And again, Deborah Beiersdorf. And I'll tell you the beauty of getting questions, and the questions came from teachers, elementary teachers, is that they care so much about their students and what they're responsible for teaching and outcomes in that. So some questions asked about the cost of the programs. The majority of the questions, and I got a few, we didn't get too many, at least that came to me, were about the split, the K-1 and then the 2-5. And what was our plan as a district to ensure that it was a seamless transition from students as they left, in this case, the Fountas and Pinnell FMP, as we call it, at second grade, and moved into another curriculum at third grade. In this case, the recommendation is benchmark, especially when we think about things like the needs of our English learners and read by grade 3 mandates and expectations, and getting our kids to grade level reading by the end of their third grade. So we've worked in answering, Kendra, absolutely being the expert here in answering what professional development and ongoing professional development and support for schools will be. So I can guarantee you it's not going to be a one and done. You do that one day in June or July or whatever, and off you go and do well with it. There definitely needs to be the support that continues, and we talk about the rollout actually is over several years as folks are getting used to new curriculum. And I also want to say too, the professional development, also working on a plan to get the materials in the hands of our school leaders, our principals, because they need to support the teachers, when they're thinking about resources and perhaps coaches or the various categorical grants that are in our schools like Zoom and Victory and Read by Grade 3. So we've reached out to assure people who might be concerned about the split or in the programs or also some questions that have come forward about the programs themselves. Are they robust enough phonics lessons and support for students? And Kendra can disagree with me, and she can certainly jump in. No one program is going to be perfect or is going to be, I think, seen as the perfect answer in every school building for every teacher, for every classroom. So that's why it's incumbent on the Office of Academics joining in with our other departments, other offices as well, to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our teachers and our schools based on data, based on assessment data and the needs of individual schools and the challenges and mandates they have to make it make sense for them. So I believe for the most part, those were the majority of the questions or concerns that came forward. I think there was also a question, President Simon Holland, that came to our attention today about the actual rubric that is used to vet materials. It's a rubric that is driven by the Nevada Department of Education that we have to use. I mean, we work very closely with them. Another interesting fact, and Kendra can talk a little bit about this, we're a large district, the second largest in our state, and our neighboring districts, our partner districts, watch our work closely when they look to adopt their own. So we do have other districts that are waiting for a decision to come forward so they can move forward and get in on the adoption with us. So we're mindful of that work as well.
I would like to add a little bit about the split, because I know back when we adopted the math materials several years ago, there was the same concern about the split. And our response at the time was math, because people were worried about the math vocabulary. Well, if we're teaching correct and accurate mathematics vocabulary, it shouldn't matter which program you have. If you teach someone to add, you're teaching them to add no matter which program you have. And so that was our initial answer. And then when we got into the program, we noticed some just small nuances. One of the programs talks about mountains when you're decomposing numbers, and the other one doesn't. So what we did was we just created some support documents for teachers in second grade to help them say, well, this is where your students are coming from. We really did some work with the second grade teachers on this is what the first grade standards looks like. This is a little bit about what the program looks like, and these are some things that they've been doing in their classroom, so they were familiar with the program just enough to know where to go from there. And my our discussion around that has been the same thing. We will do create whatever we need to create and to support the teachers in making that transition from the FAFSA Pinnell program over to the benchmark, because they are different programs, but we know that, and we're prepared to help teachers in any way possible around the split.
Okay, thanks. And we also had some questions kind of about philosophy and we received some links to some articles, Why American Kids Aren't Being Taught to Read. Let's see, Why We're Teaching Reading Comprehension in a Way That Doesn't Work. Ed Report's Summary Review of Benchmark Advanced. Any comments on any of that? I want to make sure that we address those concerns.
I can speak to the Ed Reports, but I'm going to ask Stacy to come up and talk more about literacy, because as some of you probably know, I was a high school math teacher, so I could talk to you about math all day long. But when we talk about teaching kids to read, I'm going to turn it over to the expert. But Ed Reports, if you're not familiar with Ed Reports, it's I call it like the publisher's clearinghouse for textbooks. So if you go buy a new washing machine, you often, or in the past, now you Google it, but in the past you would maybe look at publisher or at the Consumer Reports. I said publisher's clearinghouse. I was maybe thinking about winning some money. But the Consumer Reports, you go in Consumer Reports and look and see what are the best features of a new washing machine. Well, this is the same kind of thing. It's reviewed by teachers in the field, and it reviews only materials that are submitted to them, and it gives the programs a score or it's like a stoplight system. Green means you're great, yellow you need a little more work, and red, and at one point they just stop reviewing if you don't meet a certain threshold. So some materials you may see reviewed rather extensively, and other materials you may see reviewed a little more concisely. And so we do look at that resource and take input from it, but it's not our only tool that we use because we are governed by the Nevada Department of Education in terms of a rubric. We take that into consideration and use that information as best we can. But yeah, it's out there. It's helpful in a lot of ways. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Drum to address some of the more literacy-based questions.
Thank you. Welcome, Ms. Drum.
Good afternoon.
So can you tell us anything about some of the sort of philosophical concerns, because we certainly aren't curriculum experts on that.
No matter the philosophy, it's Washoe County School District looks at the standards first. And so if we look at these programs as related to the Nevada academic content standards, they do align well, which was one of the reasons why we used the rubric we did. The rubric that we used did not have every standard represented. That would be even more of a task than our committee went through. But the larger standards, or the standards that we could actually use the rubric in order to have a discussion with the committee and that the committee could have a discussion with each other, were included in the rubric. Definitely one of the things on the forefront of many teachers in Washoe County School District right now are foundational skills, especially with the Read by Grade 3 or that we're using. So the foundational skills piece needed to be strong in K through 5, and the committee found that the majority of the committee found that yes, foundational skills were important. Also included were the areas of listening and speaking, reading, writing, and all of that was represented in the rubric, and they were able to compare the rubric to the standards and then the standards to the two programs.
Okay, so you feel strongly, you feel confident that the committee can endorse these as being reflective of the best thinking we have available on reading comprehension and the foundational skills.
Yes, I do feel very confident. Part of what we do with our learning strategists for Read by Grade 3 or Nevada Kids Read is that we bring about the latest reading research with them, and we had several learning strategists or teachers who have been involved with the learning strategists on our committee, and those discussions I think were lively, and it's good to have differences in opinion, I think, as we've said earlier, but I think we all came together in the end.
Great.
And saw these two programs as being positive for Washoe County School District.
Great. Okay. Dr. Taylor.
Thank you, Madam President. And again, thank you, ladies. Just curious, and I know, thank you for not giving us all the comments back from everybody. But I'm just curious what the students said generally.
Hi, Ellen Badger for the record. Generally, the students were very positive in their reviews. The K1 students liked the materials. They were very excited to see these big books and then to have other texts in their hands when they moved into smaller group instruction. And so that was really the consensus that came out of K1, is they just liked seeing these books. In 2 through 5, they liked the depth of the questioning that were presented in the different semifinalists that were taught. They also liked the layout and the materials that they had in their hands. Specifically with Benchmark, the students are given a consumable that they're given a consumable for each unit that they are instructed upon. They're able to write, annotate in these consumables, and that was one of the things that they really remarked about, was just having this in their hands that they could write on. And so they really saw that as being highly beneficial. They also, there are digital components that come with Benchmark specifically, and they made comments on that too. They liked having the videos, the songs, and the other digital resources that the teachers use to help build understanding in the lessons.
Okay.
I wanted to add when Ellen said consumables, it made me remember that I forgot to add that even though the materials are consumable, we pay for all of the materials up front for all 7 years. That's part of the reason the cost is what it is. And so the cost keeps us going for all 7 years of the program, and they just continue to send us what we need each year. That's part of the contract. So I should have mentioned that earlier. I'm sorry, but so no worries about having a new book every year and paying for it every year. We pay for it once up front, and then they show up like magic every year.
Great. Yes,
And
Ms.
can I
Drum?
add one more
Yeah.
thing? This is Stacy Drum for the record. Beyond meeting our standards as a district and as a state, I also believe that we need to have a love of reading with our students, and our students need to gain that love of reading. And I really feel like with the feedback that we got from the students on these two programs, that we're headed in that direction.
Excellent. Okay. And good question. Yes, Vice President Raymond.
Thank you, and to all the staff and again the committee for the hours and hours of work. So thank you all. I was just curious, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on the split. I think you've adequately addressed the reasoning for it, but do you start out looking at a chunk that's K through 2 and then a chunk that's the rest, the 3 through 5, or are you looking across the board, for the whole group? You've referred a few times through K1. I'm just wondering, are they chunked, by the publishers in a certain way, or how that part works?
When the publishers submit what they have, most of the publishers were K5, and it really came down to committee discussion where the K1 group really felt strongly about Fontes and Pinnell, and then the 2-5 group felt strongly about Benchmark. And so because that's the way it sort of happened. Yeah, I mean, honestly, the goal would have been to have the same program for K5 when we started this process. That was the same way with math. And I remember having discussions with my supervisor at the time that we really thought it was going to be awful for math. We were really worried about it, and it really hasn't turned out that way at all. And so I'm hoping, and we have some good history and learning from math to make this really the best implementation we can make it.
And so for the K or the 3 through 5, there were. So I'm sorry, I was trying to just understand too that the committee reviewed all of the benchmark and Pearson and for K through 2 as well as 3 through 5. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
So there were options on the table that were the continuum K through 5. It was just determined that the best choice was okay.
Yes. Yeah.
And so when the science adoption comes up, that would be the same. They would have options that would hopefully look at all 5 or 6 grades, but would be potentially split if it was deemed by the committee to be the right choice for the student. And
That's
the learner.
correct.
Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure I understood the process.
Yeah. Good clarifications. That's great. And I just want to be reassured on the professional development side, because I know when teachers are teaching in the elementary level, they may be K1 one year, and then they may be 2 through 5 another year. So I just want to be reassured that you all will be able to address that successfully for teachers that.
Yeah, we're still providing training for new math teachers. I mean, we have new teachers every year, so we provide training every year for new teachers and teachers who've changed grade levels over the summer, or if they know they're changing grade levels early, we'll offer something in May, depending on what input we have from. A lot of times principals will email us and say, hey, I've got a new grade level here. Can you either come work with my grade level? We did that this year for a school. They had a whole new grade level in one grade. And so my math team just went out there and started, actually the ELA team worked with them too, because they were new too. But yeah, we really try to be responsive to the schools and the teachers' needs, and we provide training for new and grade level changes, and it's all in the plan.
Great. Thank you, Kendra.
You're welcome.
Trustee Kelly.
Thank you, Madam President. Yeah, on the professional development, I'm glad that you talked about that because, again, the split does concern me, especially when students make that transition from first to second grade. So we got the professional development that would help the teachers out, but what happens if in 1 or 2 years we see that split is having a negative impact? I'd just be really worried about committing to 7 years to having 2 programs. And if the data starts to show that there's struggles, like what kind of professional development could we try to do when we know that we're locked into place for a number of years on 2 programs? And have you guys talked about that? And because I am concerned about that a little bit.
So for other programs, what we've done in the past is we either provide professional development and is what is needed, or we look to provide a supplement, depending on what might be out there. And so we're always looking at supplements because there's always something new and interesting to review. So we're often looking at that and keeping that in the back of our minds. And so I think at that time, if the data showed that we were struggling in a certain area, we would either provide professional development in that area or look at the curriculum guides because maybe we're missing something in the curriculum guides at that point. And remind me to talk about that next because I forgot about that part too. And or look to a supplement for something that may be missing. In terms of curriculum guides, the ELA team will be working after we get approval, and probably in the next month or so, we will be pulling teachers in to look at the materials and start creating scope and sequence guides and curriculum guides to help guide teachers in their implementation of that. The goal is to have those ready by the time they go for training, at least a really good draft. What we've learned from math, again, is that those documents have to be updated every year because of things that teachers point out, or we bring committees in every year for that. So we don't do the work in isolation. We always include teachers in the work that we do. And so that will be part of the work this spring from the ELA team.
Okay. Other questions? Yep.
Thank you, Madam President. You just mentioned bringing teachers in, which is great, and this throughout the presentation. Generally speaking, what were their comments? I asked about the students. I didn't ask about them.
The teachers in general were very positive about both programs that they looked at. Excuse me. As far as Fountas and Pinnell went, the teachers liked the responsive nature, being able to look at what students needed, how they were reacting to the specifics in the specific instruction, and then being able to respond to what was needed. They had the materials available to them so that they could pull a small group and do some reteaching. And so their comments generally circled around that. As far as K1 went, the teachers were also just excited by the high quality materials, and I know that makes a huge difference when they go to instruction as well. For benchmark, the teachers noticed that they actually had very similar comments to the students. They really liked the consumable, the fact that the kids could annotate on the text itself, that they were able to go back into the text to answer questions, and that it wasn't an anthology where they weren't able to interact with that text. They wanted to have the ability to do that. They made comment about the writing instruction in benchmark and how strong it was, that they felt like that would be a benefit to them as they move into genre-based writing. They also made comment about the digital materials and having access to digital resources for instruction, but also being able to access their teacher's edition online. And so that was something that they made comments about as well.
Okay, all right. And I know there were representatives from UNR on the panel. Any input from them that you want to share with us, or parents? There were also parents on the.
I've worked with Dr. Parrish, Dr. Sarah Parrish, in the department up at UNR for quite a while, and she was very positive about both programs. I know the university has used different texts by Fountas and Pinnell in the past, and so that was a familiar way of looking at literacy instruction. And she found that the fact that they use Fountas and Pinnell texts at the university and that the school district would be using some of their materials would be a nice crossover between the two.
Great. And then last question, I know many of our parents will be curious about the how this translates into technology and an electronic version of these materials, since, you know, for a lot of folks, they're not using books anymore. So if you could comment on that. Make sure that.
Thank you. Ellen Badger again. So with Benchmark specifically, there is digital access for students, so they'll be able to access those materials digitally. With K1 students, it may be a little more limited, but we are able to work with Fountas and Pinnell to make sure that they have access to materials digitally as well. It depends on what student need is, especially where K1 is, but for 2-5, they have a very well built out student platform.
Great. Okay. And of course, my kindergarten age granddaughter can beat me on anything online, so I think even that's changing. Okay. Any other questions? Yes. Trustee Caudill.
Will this curriculum provide an easier path for the teachers to assign work on digital days than maybe the curriculum they're using now?
How about if I take that one? Yes, please. And then feel free to add in. Deborah Beiersdorf, again, Trustee Caudill, yes, absolutely. And we are, Kendra's starting work along with her amazing team in all core subject areas, all the areas that Kendra oversees, to start transitioning a lot of our curriculum onto a platform where students will be able to access it easily. Teachers will be able to access it as well. And one of the nice, I think, outcomes of that will be great access on our digital days that keeps kids and teachers moving forward in the work that's happening in the classroom. So my perspective, absolutely. And as we have, I'm so excited that we will be starting the science adoption in the near future, and what that will be able to do for not just digital days, but very much so for digital days. And high quality curriculum in the hands of all students and all teachers as kids move from school to school, or teachers may move from grade level. In an easy place for them to access is super important. So as a district, and there's others that can speak to that more than I can, but as a district, we're moving in that direction for all our kids K-12.
Any other questions or comments from board members? Do we have any public comment, JJ? No public comment. Is anyone ready to make a motion? Vice President Raymond.
Fumble around there. I move that the Board of Trustees approves the recommendation of the Textbook Advisory Committee for the purchase of K-5 English Language Arts instructional materials for the total approximate amount of $4,970,856, with funding coming from the 030 MER funds account as follows: fiscal year 2019, $1,920,856; fiscal year 2020, $3,050,000. Period. Stop.
Is there a second? A second. Second by Dr. Taylor. A motion by Vice President Raymond. Is there any further discussion? Well, I just, in discussion, again, want to say how impressed I am with how robust and thorough and comprehensive this process has been. And again, really thank you to everyone who participated in this. I feel like we can all have confidence that this is a great selection, and just really appreciate the rigor and the dedication and how conscientious everybody has been in this. So very exciting. Thank you very much. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries unanimously. Congratulations. Thank you. That's great. How are we doing, trustees? Do you need a quick break before we go on? We're almost done. Keep going, keep going. I didn't ask you. Okay, we'll move on to 5.03. Presentation and discussion of Washoe County School District Nutrition Services School Meal Options. Oh, and you leave anyway. No, I'm kidding. Go ahead. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us, Ms. Solis and Mr. Supple. And is that Cindy Rainsden? Okay, well, welcome, and please go ahead.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you very much for allowing us this opportunity to talk about what we do over at Nutrition Services, share that with you. We're very proud of it, so we're excited for the opportunity. We wanted to start off by just with a quick business overview of Nutrition Services. So Washoe County School District Nutrition Services has a partnership with Airmark for management of the food service operation. We are also an enterprise fund, which means we are self-sustaining. We don't, take anything from the general fund. We actually get our revenue from federal reimbursements based off the meals that we serve, and also cash sales and vended meals. We have partnerships with the food bank, Head Start, that we vend meals for them, and we get revenue that way. And we also have a catering program. We use those revenues to pay for our expenses, any food that we purchase, materials, all of our labor, and then, of course, our nice general overhead, right? So utilities and replacing equipment and all that fun stuff. Our team, we have about 430 staff members currently. To be fully staffed, we should probably be about 460. So like other departments in the district, we're experiencing a staff shortage. We have about 80 employees in our central kitchen facility. That includes employees that help prepare and pack meals in our central kitchen, as well as a full warehouse and distribution team. So we have a fleet that, once we prepare the food and any inventory that we get into our central production facility, then goes out to all of our sites. And then, our site employees, that's where the magic happens, right? So 350 site-based employees out in all our schools preparing and serving meals to our students.
Mike Supple. So part of our program is the school district sponsors 96 serving sites throughout Washoe County School District. Those are all the elementary, middle, and high schools, and then we do sponsor 4 charter schools within our district. And amongst that, with the school breakfast program, school lunch program, after-school snack program, we have what we call Provision 2 schools. So there's 22 Provision 2 schools, and it's where the percentage of the student population of free and reduced is so high that all students eat for free at those schools, breakfast and lunch. And to dig a little bit deeper, we'd have 2 schools that are community eligible schools. And that is based off of direct certification from the state that 40% or more of the student population meets that. And once again, in the community eligible schools, all students eat for free. And then we have 9 schools that are breakfast after the bell. And this was something a couple of years ago Governor Sandoval put into effect, I think it was Senate Bill 503. And so those 9 schools do breakfast in the classroom, which is kind of like room service in the classroom, that breakfast is waiting for them as they walk through the door of the classroom or they get seated, and while they're doing the business of the day, that they're eating breakfast. I'll go back, and the community eligible schools and the Provision 2 schools also do breakfast in the classroom. And then we have our normal breakfast and lunch schools that everything is run through the cafeteria. But on top of that, we've got about 23 school sites that do after-school snack programs. Another 22 do what we call FFVP, which is fresh fruit and vegetable. And that's where every week there's a featured fruit and vegetable that is served to them in the classroom, and there's some curriculum around it, tells them where the fruit or vegetable comes from, and they share it, and it's kind of outside of the cafeteria that they're exposed to it. And they're a little bit more exotic fruits and vegetables, all grown in the USA, of course. But it's something that they don't normally see that's on our menus, and there's a little bit more money there in the grant that we can use. And then, like Leonka said, Kids Cafe is a dinner program sponsored through the Northern Nevada Food Bank, and we vend meals to them, which meet the nutritional requirements. And then Head Start is, the young kids like K through 5, early Head Start and Head Start programs that we do. But with the Kids Cafe dinner program and the Head Start, it's breakfast, lunch, and snack programs. It's probably, we vend, those are probably another 75 to 80 sites at school sites, but then some of them are actually at Head Start classrooms throughout the district.
Ask a quick question on the community eligibility. Like, was that part of what we discussed? In the
Last year, part of the internal audit
yeah.
process.
Yes. Okay. So you all went back to the state, and we did determine. And you said how many schools?
There's two schools. It's
okay.
Booth Elementary and Natchez that are on the
Great.
community
Okay.
eligible. And the difference between community eligible and Provision 2, it's just generating different numbers. And under community eligible, we're reduced at the free and the paid rate. Under Provision 2, we are reimbursed at the free, reduced, and paid rate.
Okay. Well, I trust that you all are maximizing our return on investment from those. What an assortment of programs to have to manage and monitor. Very grateful for that. And I have been in classrooms when those kids are having their breakfast, and it's a wonderful thing for them. You use the word room service, but I want the public to know this is not, it's a pretty
Easy.
Yeah, there's no champagne. I'll start there. But it's a pretty basic breakfast, and in those schools, most of those kids would not have any food before they came to school. So it's a wonderful program, and it does enable the classroom activities to keep going, and those kids are getting nutrition. So it's pretty minimalist, but it's great nutrition for them. I appreciate that. Okay, sorry to interrupt that, but I just wanted to make sure I was tracking. Yeah.
Okay. So might be a little hard to see, but so this is just wanted to show kind of our meal participation trends and, what our goals were for this year. So you can see that, our goal for this year is to serve about 2.8 million breakfast, 4.7 million lunches, and a la carte is really everything outside of the reimbursable meal. So whether that's, again, the vended meals that we serve for the dinner program, for Head Start, or any additional extras that the students might want to pick up within the cafeteria. So if they buy a milk or if they buy an extra entree and that sort of thing. So that is, our goal this year is to serve a little over 1 million what we call a la carte equivalents, which equates to about $2.7 million worth of revenue actually sold to equate to that meal total. And okay.
Well, I was just going to ask, in relation to the enrollments, it looks like our enrollments are fairly flat in the last couple of years, I think, and it looks like we're just staying stable in terms of our market share, if you will, of the kids that are in school. Is that a fair assumption from that data?
It is, yes. So just trying to, and get more customers out of the same pool every year is, that's our goal. Mm-hmm. And when we met with our team at the beginning of the year, we said, just like it's, every child by name and face, to
Mm-hmm.
kinder to graduation, it's our goal to feed every child and to get to know them, by name and face, from kinder to graduation. So yeah,
great.
we have, like you said, it hasn't grown, but we still are trying to grow meals.
And we haven't lost anything. Yeah, every child by name and face through the lunch line is what.
Correct. Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And so this is just our year-to-date meals served. So this was through our December close. So through December close, about 1.3 million breakfasts. That equates to a little over 15,000 breakfast meals a day. So as everybody can see, right, we have some opportunities there. If we have 64,000 students, we got some opportunity. 2.1 million lunches, about 25,000 a day. A la carte, you see there about 280,000. And then our after-school snacks, we have served 40,000 of those, and then you see the vended meals there as well. With a total, we're coming in a little over 4 million meals when we closed out December.
And that's, as you say here, 47,000 a day.
Correct.
And I would encourage fellow trustees to go visit the Nutrition Services Center in the morning and see. I think, Ellen, you could get lost in the vat of taco sauce that's being produced on a daily basis, because it is a huge endeavor. 47,000 meals. It's beyond comprehension. So we're so appreciative of the staff. Yes, Vice President Raymond.
Thank you. I just thought of a quick question. I've worked a bit with the City of Reno on their after-school program, which the name just evaporated from my head. Sierra Kids. Thank you. And I know that they often provide after-school snacks. Have they ever approached us, or is there any thing there that you think would work for a partnership where they could purchase, instead of them going to Costco to purchase the snacks, could they purchase it from the school district and maybe find a new revenue source there?
Yeah, every year, let's see, working through Denise Benson and everything with the after-school snack program, she identifies sites within the district. And so if they want to bring that in, they can. We can always kind of service them like we do Head Start and Kids Cafe, where we can vend the snack to them at no problem, and deliveries included, usually, as long as it's not too crazy. But yeah, we are finding we are competing with a few more people in town, because the Boys and Girls Club is doing some of the charter schools that they're hosting in their facilities, and doing some of the new charter schools that have opened up because they have a delivery vehicles now too.
Thank you. I imagine the cost margin isn't like huge on the snacks, but my daughter's school recently added the a la carte snacks as an option, and I think it has almost as long a line some days as the school lunch line, because it's just so cool to go, take your $1 and buy a snack at snack time instead of just opening up the Tupperware that your mom packed.
Yeah, but there's not that smiley face note in the one they.
Right.
That's right. That's right. Great. Okay. You can go ahead.
So each month we plan for over 32 different menus for all of our various service locations. Each of these menus is tailored to fit the specific USDA nutrition regulations and our department goal of providing all students access to healthy and appealing meals. Each day at breakfast, students are given a choice of whole grain, protein-rich entrees, a variety of fruit, fresh fruit or juice, and a choice of low-fat or non-fat milk. So daily at elementaries, we offer 2 different breakfast choices, and middle school and high schools have 8 different entree choices. This slide shows some of our new items and some of our standard popular ones as well. So some things that we don't necessarily think are great for breakfast, but going around and doing focus groups and student surveys, we always try to add hot items to our menu, and the kids are like, I'm not so into hot, even when it's freezing cold outside. So they want that muffin or a cereal bar or something else.
Did you say 8 entrees a day at high schools? They have a choice from among 8 entrees.
Yes.
Wow. That has to, that's great for the kids. That has to be, there has to be a lot of food that's not eaten on a daily basis. That must be quite a science to estimate, how many of each thing.
Yes. So breakfast, I feel, is a little bit easier for our staff. Depending on the school, you really have the same students coming in day after day. So you get to know your students and what they're looking for. But there is some guessing and trial and error going on at our sites, definitely.
It's like running a restaurant. Yeah.
Madam President?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that a corn dog for breakfast?
It is. It's a turkey sausage with a pancake wrapped around it.
Oh, right. Oh, whole grain, yeah. Absolutely. I can tell.
Whole
right.
grain
And a little
pancake
syrup dipper situation, right?
Hey, that's going on the menu, right?
Right, you know?
Yeah, okay. I had the same question. Yeah, good. Okay.
And our lunches consist of a variety of offerings as well. All grain items served are whole grain rich. Proteins are lower sodium and fat than you would find commercially, and students are offered fresh fruit and fresh vegetables daily. We also provide a choice of low fat and non-fat milk at lunch.
For lunchtime, we have 4 choices at the elementary level. Middle schools have 6 choices of entrees, and our high schoolers have 8 entree choices. So we do have quite a variety of options for all students. And again, we do have a couple of our new items and some popular.
And so in creating all these menus, one of the things that we really do focus on is customer feedback, because we don't want to be throwing away a bunch of food and wasting it. And so we gather customer feedback in a variety of ways. We meet with our managers, different sites. So we do like elementary manager meetings, middle school and high school, and just get their real kind of raw feedback from what they're seeing out in their sites. They might say, hey, when we make this item, we're throwing a ton of it away. When we make this item, we can't even keep up. And so we make menu adjustments accordingly. We also do student advisory committees where we go out and meet with students. And this is typically like a leadership class or a student council group, some type of a student representative group at a school. And we use the start, stop, continue technique with them. So they let us know what are things they'd like us to start doing, stop doing, and then continue doing or serving. And then that allows us to also provide feedback to our managers. It's always great, when they give us some nice continues that they enjoy for us to share with our team. And we also take the opportunity at the student advisory committees to provide samples and get their feedback of potential new menu items. And so then, it's really cool when they try it in the student advisory committee, and then a couple of months later it shows up on the menu. So if it's something that they enjoyed. We do just real, kind of traditional online surveys as well for students. Open up the center for center tours. So student groups or the community can come in and actually see the food being prepared and packaged. And then at any type of community event that, we're a part of, we definitely try to talk about the program, answer any questions that parents may have, whether it's, the Run for Ed or the Back to School Expo, anything that that we can be a part of to kind of share our story. We get out there and do that. So really, the goal for this year was service excellence, and we really wanted to just bring it back down to basics and focus on menu quality and customer service. Really, I fundamentally believe we all do that. That's as adults, right? That's why we go out to dine somewhere, right? Is the food good, and do I feel comfortable when I'm there? And so, really looking at how can we improve kind of those two pillars, So looking at variety of menu items, Cindy, works with her team to get new things on the menu, do different recipe testing, have some service standardizations just to make us more efficient, because the more efficient we get, the more money we have to reinvest back into our program. And customer service, just looking at alternative dining locations, whether it's a cart in a courtyard, a cart right by the front door where the buses come in, just kind of looking, can we be where our customers are? Always looking at how to improve speed of service, doing point of sale upgrades right now in all of our middle and high schools to try to get them kind of up to speed. And, just always staying service focused and being very strategic with all of our investments, reinvesting again in those points of sale and in different equipment that can, again, make us more efficient in the kitchens. So that's it. And, just really wanted, again, to thank the board for allowing us this opportunity. We have a phenomenal team. We're very proud of what we do, and that very humbled to have the opportunity to serve the students of the district. So, just any questions?
Right. Thank you. Answer questions. Yes, Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Madam President. I like the metric about participation, but I would also, to me, that's almost a double-edged sword, though, because I would think if you were to start offering, more sugary items, the participation might start going up. But that's not what we want to find that good balance. Right. And so I'm just wondering, is there another metric that we can have in addition to participation that could somehow capture the quality of the food and the fact that if we, can we track if we offer something that's very healthy, what's the participation, and if it's something that we offer that on that particular day that's not as healthy, and so there's got to be something else. And I'm just wondering if you have any ideas or thoughts on that.
Sure. And so One of the things we do is we do document all of our production every day. So, for example, at a high school where they're offering 8 different entrees, and, one of those might be a spicy chicken sandwich, which again is on a whole grain bun. It's a leaner protein and all that. But, that versus, maybe a cheeseburger and then, maybe the pasta salad entree that we saw and then maybe a chef salad. And then we can see that out of the 100 students, that or 200 students that maybe came through the line, that production work can show us the breakdown. And that's how our managers forecast, right, for the next day. And what we traditionally see is that, they kind of go with what they know a lot of times. And, a lot of times those kind of salad options, things that you would kind of perceive to be like the healthier choice, tend to be chosen less. But we are looking at doing some marketing around some of the healthier choices. We have been getting a lot of feedback in our student advisory committees on, different fresh fruits that they could maybe have access to, and smoothie options and things like that. So a lot of the stuff that they're asking for, we actually do offer, and that's why I'm saying we're looking at developing like a marketing campaign around what we are offering that's a little bit healthier.
And those student advisory committees, do we have a committee for every grade, or are they tend to be the older students that participate?
So we do it by, like the school. So for the elementary schools, I would say yes, it tends to be like 3rd through 5th, just because that's usually who sits on their like student government. And then middle schools, we've gotten kind of a variety. It's usually a teacher that lets us in, a classroom there. And in the high schools, it's usually the student government, which I think consists of upperclassmen, like juniors and seniors.
Yeah, maybe that would be something then to look at.
Sure.
How can we get, first and second grader? He's a 3rd grader now, but when he was in 1st and 2nd grade, he would have loved to have said, this is what I like to eat, this is what my buddies like to eat, don't offer this. So maybe just finding a way to try to broaden the pool of, based on age and socioeconomic and anything you can think of, just to be a little bit more cognizant of the fact that we have our broad student population. I'd love to get feedback from as many types of students as possible.
Sure, I agree. Thank you.
Yes, Ellen. Trustee Minetto.
Having just immediately coming out of the schools and being on duty in the lunchroom, I saw garbage cans full of oranges. I know, it killed us all. Is there any way you could, I don't know if anybody has time to cut those up, but the kids go, but when you got to do this, of course it was elementary. Got to go to class.
Yeah, I know that we have in the past had the slicers, haven't we? You might have more background than me, sorry.
We're with a tough health department here in Washoe County. and if some of our schools, they're not even allowed to have open food, or they can't even wash apples because they only have one sink in their kitchen. And so unless there's a food prep sink separate from a hand washing sink, we can't cut certain items at schools and stuff like that. I know at one point there's a few schools that do have that, and they have started to quarter their oranges and put them in little sandwich baggies, so to speak. And so that's worked at the places we can do it. One of the things we've done, like apples and everything, we do feature whole apples, but then we also buy the apple slices that you can buy in the individual bags, and we do see that those are a lot more popular. So we try to cut it down as best as we can. The nice thing with like the FFEP program that we do, they get like little portion cups, and it's cut and prepped and ready to eat, which does help out.
So what do you do when kids are like on holiday or during the weekends and they're not getting a meal? How are they serviced?
Over the holiday breaks, the Kids Cafe program that we do, also it's the Northern Nevada Food Bank takes care of them during the intersessions, and they have a summer feeding program. And the summer feeding program that we partner with the food bank with, they not only go to the school sites that we have, but they're like the ice cream truck at the public parks. They pull in and they'll serve off the back of the food bank truck, and they post the times and everything, and they let the communities know. There's even sometimes they go into apartment complexes and have a spot in the parking lot that they'll pull in and distribute lunches.
So are they getting 3 meals, or they're just getting?
They
a
get
meal?
if the area has the demand for it, they'll get breakfast and lunch. The food bank runs the kind of the summer programs and like that for us.
Thank you. Trustee Caudill.
Yeah, I would just like to commend you for the work that you're doing, you and your staff. It's something that is absolutely needed, and maybe you don't notice it, but when it's not offered, you absolutely notice it. So that's great. I would also commend you for the student advisory committees going out and speaking to students. Anything that we can do as a district to teach our students early on to speak up, let your voice be heard, and it's a powerful statement for them to make a recommendation, and then a few weeks or months later they see that recommendation offered, and it just empowers them to keep speaking up and telling their friends, hey, I actually suggested that. See, look, and then more students want to get involved and speak up. So I would commend you for the work that you're doing, and thank you all, and thank your staff for what you're doing.
That's great. And I have a couple questions, and you may have mentioned this, and I didn't hear it. Locally sourced food, is that part of that fresh fruits and vegetables thing? Can you talk about the use of locally sourced foods?
Sure. So here in Nevada, we do have kind of a limited supply of locally sourced. So depending on your definition, all of our produce mostly comes from California, the Sacramento Valley. So our fresh fruit provider is a local distributor, but it does mostly come out of California. And then right now our apples are coming out of Washington and various areas, but all of it is required to be U.S. grown. So as local as possible.
Yeah, I know with the quantity that we need on a daily basis, I know a lot of the locally sourced farms can't provide that quantity, but I would really encourage, where you can to make sure, you reach out. There are some farm collaboratives that are trying to expand their offerings. Mike?
Yeah, when they do have a good crop right across the street here, we buy mini bell peppers from them, and we'll put them in the FFEP program.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I know it's important to our local farms to be able to have, reliable customers that have a reliable requirement. So that would be great. And then the other, Ellen mentioned it, Trustee Minetto mentioned it a little bit, the food waste. What are the options for, is there anything that we can do anything with?
So one of the kind of options that we provide is a share table. And so we do encourage schools to, because the USDA requirement is that they take a fruit or vegetable. And so it is kind of this where, you sometimes feel like you're just hounding them sometimes. Like, would you like a fruit or vegetable? Would you like a fruit or vegetable? And they're like, no, I just want a sandwich and my milk. Can I take a fruit or vegetable? And so we do set up share tables where the students are able to, once they finish their meal, or sometimes you see them even kind of, on the way to their table, but they can put items that they really don't think they're going to eat, or if they've already finished their meal that they haven't touched and wouldn't like on the share table. And then that share table is open for anybody to come in and kind of help themselves if they'd like seconds, if they'd like an extra orange or what have you. And there are some schools that do it. I mean, it's beautiful to, kind of watch that service, the meal service, and you see, kids coming up and they feel very comfortable doing it, coming up and grabbing extras. And so that's the main option that we do provide. On top of that, we do have our supervisors that, support the schools, and, we look at what did they order into their school, what was their production for the day, what did they have left over, and when we see kind of big gaps there, then we address it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then that's a training opportunity for us to go out and spend some time with our staff in the schools.
And I would imagine that the health department doesn't allow you to do much with any leftover food. And I want to put this on the public record, and I'm not blaming the health department. I know there are very legitimate reasons for that, but we also know there is hunger in our community. And if there were any possibility of our being able to share some of that unused food with the the homeless shelter or any other place? Are there any ways we can give it to the senior center or anything at all? Anybody want to comment for us, just to clarify for the public?
Sure. So it is more difficult at our school sites. So once it leaves our central production facility, we kind of lose a lot of those controls. So because all of our food is received in one central location, during breaks or right before breaks, if we do have excess food, we do donate it to local shelters or the food bank programs. So we are able to do that when we do have excess, especially produce that we know won't get used over the break periods. But yeah, once it goes out to our school sites, it's very hard to track and trace the way that the health department would require.
Okay, well that's good to know that you are working on that. Yes, Trustee Cotto?
Do you allow students to take like to-go boxes? No?
No, not really. Basically, the food that's served to them in the classroom or that they get through the cafeteria, it's meant to be consumed in the cafeteria. Part of it's the control of the school. If it's a whole piece of fruit that they maybe want to eat at the afternoon recess, we usually that's allowed them to do as long as the school lets them do it. But sometimes they're concerned about the trash that may end up out on the playground. So,
yeah, I only ask because you may have some students that they don't want to say anything, but maybe they don't get it to eat a lot at home, and they would absolutely fill up a to-go box and take it home, and that may be their dinner or will help supplement what they get at home. So I just thought I'd ask.
yeah, hopefully, in some of those schools, the Kids Cafe supper program at night is a community program, so you don't have to be a student there. It's just anybody in the neighborhood, 18 and under, no questions asked, can come in and take advantage of the meal. And then I know with the food bank as well, they do what they call a backpack program. That on Fridays, it's backpacks full of food that they allow the student to take home and consume with their family.
Yes, Vice President Raymond.
I've heard in the news about some changes to those federal USDA requirements that are placed on schools. Have those been enacted on yet, or will they impact us, and how?
So those changes do go into effect July 1st for next school year. So we are looking at what items we potentially would want to switch over. So one of the changes does have to do with the whole grain requirement. So it does allow for some items that we serve to not have to be 51% whole grain. And we do find that there is some student feedback amongst some of our items that we serve, especially, our whole wheat tortillas and other things that they don't necessarily see at home. So that would allow for us to offer other items that would be more popular for students.
Thank you. And this might not be in your realm, but do you know if it would change the requirements that if teachers or groups were bringing outside food into the school, would it change that list of required vendors that they have to use?
I don't think that the regulations specifically around the meal programs don't really address that. That's typically something that's kind of an internal, like a student wellness district decision. So yeah, like Cindy mentioned, the changes really are around allowing more flexibility around whole grains, and then they're going to maintain the sodium requirements where they're at now, where traditionally, or what was supposed to happen was they were supposed to get stricter and stricter 2 more times actually. And when people say, oh, the school food tastes like cardboard, well, our palates are very accustomed to high levels of sodium, and so when you cut that down really far, and people aren't used to it, so we're happy about that at least it gets to stay there. It's still a very appropriate sodium amount for the day, but it's not. So those were the kind of big things.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Trustee Kelly?
Thank-
Food is a big topic
Yeah.
with this group. That's because I didn't give them a break.
You mentioned the apple slices and the packaging, and I've seen orange slices, papaya slices, mango slices that are in packaging as well, and I'm just wondering if there's been any talk about can we reach out to vendors in California that provide other types of fruits in packaging, because I think that would be a great way maybe to reduce some of the wastage of oranges and other things. But I would think that if students had more fruits that they could pick from or pull from, it would also increase participation, and it would probably just offer more healthy choices. So I'm wondering if there's any discussion on looking into that. And then also, I mean, there's equipment I'm sure that you could purchase that would allow you to take an orange and package it at the school district's facility, a nutrition facility, and of course there'd probably be a cost for that. But I would certainly like to see what those options might be. So that was just my suggestion. I mean, I know, and the other question I have is on berries. You know, I mean, at least northern Nevada is pretty good for growing blueberries and raspberries, and I've eaten at some schools in the past, and I don't remember seeing berries as an option. And I'm just wondering if maybe I just happen to not go when berries are offered, or is there some rule against offering strawberries and blueberries and things like that? So those are my two questions.
So as far as berries go, it is a difficult process for us. We'd have to bring them into our central kitchen to wash and prep and bag at the center. I know previously they have done it, and it is something that we do hope to get a greater variety of fruits. That is one of the biggest things from our student advisory committees. So I am trying to work with our produce vendor to get a greater variety of prepackaged items. We have previously had orange slices. They just aren't great quality by the time, you know, all of the things that we do to them, and by the time they're served, they tend to not have great quality. So we are looking at trying to make more menu choices that are applicable to the students. So clementines are a good option versus the orange. They are easier to peel, and so we are trying to menu those more frequently, and as well as other items, and offer greater variety of prepackaged.
Yeah, that's great. And I would just say, again, that if there's a cost to it, just, you know, bring it to the board. I mean, let us look at the cost. It might be something that we say we'll fund it if it means we could increase the percentage of fruit that the students have available to them. So as you're doing your research, you know, don't be afraid to bring that to us at some point.
Okay, Trustee Calvert.
Yes. What do you do for children that have allergies? Maybe they're allergic to, I hear a lot of gluten stuff. So do you address those issues with those specific kids, or do you have a meal that you put aside for them? How do you deal with that issue?
We do have a process for dietary restrictions. So we do have a diet modification form that we ask be filled out by the doctor. So once we receive that into our office, we have our special programs department actually handles all of the food allergies and intolerances. So if we have gluten-free students, we prepare their meals separately. They're boxed up and sent out in their own special kit so as not to, you know, be contaminated by anything else. So we do kind of take that away from our school site so they don't have to worry about any of those items. So when students do have special needs, we are able to accommodate that.
Okay. Any other questions? This was a great discussion. Very informative. Yeah, very informative. Okay, well, I think you answered all of our questions for today. Thank you so much for the great work that you all do. And we know that, you know, that serving lunch is and breakfast and dinner and snacks is a very important part of our having a great education for our kids. So thank you. Okay.
Okay. Do we still have food trucks? Okay. One food truck.
And the barbecue and all that stuff. Yeah. Okay, our next item is a biggie. 5.04, award of bid number 11365A, construction of new Arrow Creek Area Middle School to Clark Sullivan Construction for an estimated amount of $73,440,220. And here is our A team, Adam and Andrea, Adam Searcy and Andrea Sullivan, to give us the rundown on this very exciting board action. Adam?
All right, good afternoon. Thank you very much. I like that nickname. My name is Adam Searcy, Chief Facilities Management Officer. I'm going to start this off and just give a tiny bit of background, right? So many of you have been well aware of this project for a long time, but it's been, well, this is kind of a presentation outline. We're going to go through the background, the scope of the project, how we got to where we are and where we hope to go over the next year and a half. Just backing up where I was going was that this piece of property specifically has been formally of interest. The school district has formally been appealing to the Forest Service to acquire since 2004. It was actually explicitly named on the 2016 WC1 ballot measure, Arrow Creek Area Middle School, and it was really in late 2017 that we kind of reinitiated our acquisition efforts with the Forest Service. But throughout most of 2018, we engaged with the Forest Service on that process and resulted in a tremendous process. A lot of value was added through the conversations with the public, with the community, with the agencies, with the Forest Service. And where we sit today is that the property is owned outright by the school district. In fact, design was underway throughout that entire period, and a grading permit has been obtained from the county at this time, with the building and site permits in process. So, as I said, during this entire time throughout 2018, we were proceeding with design. Now that we've gained ownership to the property, gained access to the property, we've dug holes in it, tested the material, explored it physically, analyzed those results, and compiled all that information along with our contract documents into a bid. And really the scope of this work is very similar to what we're constructing right now at Desert Skies Middle School, and of course Sky Ranch Middle School as well. Unique site conditions as there are on any project, but all of the lessons learned, the changes, the value that building those two middle schools right now have brought us have been incorporated into this particular project. We actually issued this as a single contract. There's, differing projects will lend itself to multiple construction contracts at times. This one, we were able to basically bundle everything up, and it, in this instance, we felt it allowed the contractor a little more flexibility to determine their own means and methods to achieve what is a challenging project in the most efficient way that they possibly can. So, I kind of detailed on this slide, the high-level scope overview, obvious on-site construction scope, the building, of course, the parking lot, the utilities, the retaining walls, etc. There are some off-site improvements, extensive amount of additional sidewalk, some turn pockets, and an actual new traffic signal, all a part of this construction contract. And then we did actually add some public outreach component. It was a very involved public engagement process throughout 2019. We know how disruptive at times construction can be, especially in a community or at a location that's surrounded by homes. So, we've got a plan in place to maintain that communication and maintain those relationships as we move through construction. But that's basically an overview of the scope of work. And the last bullet there, the furniture, fixtures, and equipment that will be purchased and provided by the school district separate and aside from this construction contract. So that's kind of the summary of the scope of work. And Andrea's going to walk everyone through the solicitation process.
Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Andrea Sullivan. I'm the Director of Procurement and Contracts for the school district. So this bid was publicly advertised on November 20th. And it was out on the streets for 7 weeks. So we knew it's going to be an important project. We were hoping to generate a lot of interest. We also had some holidays in there. So we put it out for 7 weeks so that everybody would have time to review the plans and ask questions. We ran the ad in the Reno Gazette-Journal as is required by law, but then also we post this bid on our solicitations website, and then we emailed all 350 contractors that are registered with us to let them know. And of course, building up, at every pre-bid that we had for other projects or bid opening, we just kept reminding them that this bid was coming out and encouraging them to participate. So we do feel like we had a lot of outreach on this project, and just about everybody in the valley knew this was happening. We had 2 formal question and answer periods to allow people to ask first rounds of questions, get our responses to them, digest that information, and that could cause more questions.
Through those 2 question and answer periods, we had 53 formal requests for informations, which we call RFIs. Each one of those RFIs usually contain multiple questions. So throughout the process, we answered 175 questions on this project. What I can tell you that means for the Brown Center is all hands on deck over the holidays. Everybody was working hard, trying to get all these questions, find the appropriate people to answer them, assemble them, post them for everybody to see so that the contractors had good documents and had all their questions answered so they could submit a good bid. Through that, we answered those 175 questions through 5 separate addenda. And the good news is that when we held our pre-bid meeting on December 13th at DePoli Middle School, you can see the picture on the slide, we had a lot of people there. I think it was something like 85 people that showed up. You can't see that off to the side people are standing, and in the back of the room people are standing. So we probably had seven to 9 general contractors there, and we had a whole lot of subcontractors who were there and interested in the work. So we opened bids on January 11th. We received 2 bids. Obviously, we had hoped for more. We began receiving information midweek, the week the bids opened, that some contractors were not going to bid. Of the 2 bids received, we ultimately had to deem one non-responsive, and I think you saw that on the bid tabulation. NRS 338.141 requires that bidders submit their 1% subcontractor list within 2 hours of the bid opening. And we had a bidder that did not submit that in a timely fashion as is required by law. However, Clark Sullivan Construction was still the low bidder between the 2. So the good news is the low bidder did submit their 1% list. Their bid came in at $73.4 million. The engineer's estimate was $71.1 million. So there is, a $2.3 million delta on the estimate compared to what the low bid came in on. However, we have total funding allocation for this project is sitting at $81.4 million. That amount has been approved by the Capital Funding Protection Committee and has been approved by this board. So we're within the total funding at this time, which is good. Some of the market factors, we did get some feedback from contractors who maybe originally had planned to submit, and in fact, many of them asked a lot of the questions and then didn't end up bidding. There was these 2 main factors, and sometimes they are very related to one another. And one is a bit of a schedule risk for a July 2020 completion. We bid this project as soon as we owned the land, so we really couldn't have gotten it out any sooner. And so it is a fairly tight construction schedule, but we had to weigh that with the consequences of pushing it out, which would delay the opening for an entire year. And so we believe this was the right thing to do. We still believe it's the right thing to do. And the other thing is that the contractors in this valley have a huge backlog of projects, and during our bidding process, many of them were awarded some very large private projects. And so when you have a tight schedule and you also have a very busy workload as a contractor, and they're having a hard time staffing, so they couldn't really staff a project like this with this sort of timeline for construction while they were also managing these other big projects. So it wasn't for lack of trying, I can assure you, but that is the sort of the reality of where we are right now. So that was the bad news, maybe.
Well, and I think it's also, pardon me, I didn't mean to interrupt,
Sure.
but I think it's also a function of the labor force.
Absolutely.
The contractors just cannot get the labor for a project of this magnitude.
That's right.
And Clark and Sullivan has been a successful contractor for us on many other projects and very capable. So
That's right. And that's in fact my next slide. That I got through the bad news. The good news is we have a really good general contractor. Clark Sullivan has done a lot of work for the school district. They have built 17 new schools for us over the year, so we know they can do it. Also, I think just as important is we have a really strong subcontractor list that they put together. And so we have this really experienced general contractor, and all of the subcontractors that they've listed are well known to us. They're very experienced, and we really feel like we have a great team. So if there was any hesitation about the schedule, we feel like we have the exact right team to be able to get that done. And so Clark Sullivan has done the Demonte Ranch expansion. They're also currently the CMAR working on the nutrition services expansion, in addition to many, many projects they've done for us over the years. So we have a high level of confidence with them, as well as with the subcontractors that they're using. And I think a really important note that although lots of people are busy here, 91% of the contract value went to local subcontractors. And so I think that's really important. And so we were really happy to see that Clark & Sullivan was able to do that. And I know, by the way, Jarrett Rosenow from Clark & Sullivan is here today, so if you had any questions for him, he's here in the audience.
Thanks for coming and giving us the wave. No, that's great. Okay.
So just to kind of take it home, highlights, as Andrea mentioned, extremely competitive, hot market these days, but a high quality, low bid and contract that we're putting forward. I wanted to also add for the record that, Andrea mentioned the dollars that have been allocated to this total project. You guys may recall the allocation usually comes in the form of, construction, engineer's estimate, furniture and fixture and equipment allocation, a construction professional services allocation. There is some flexibility across that allocation, and we consulted with the chair and vice chair of the Capital Funding Protection Committee on that flexibility. They believe that moving forward with this award within the approved allocation was the most appropriate next step. We will be returning to that Capital Funding Protection Committee in February and giving them an update. And there is contingency in that overall allocation, so we remain optimistic that we'll be able to deliver all of the scope for this project within that total allocation. And I just also wanted to clarify that if for some reason, as with all of our construction projects, if circumstances warranted that we weren't able to complete all of the scope within the allocated funding, we would be required to come back and request approval for any change orders or additional funding should that occur. Again, it's well within the range of reasonableness that we'll be able to achieve that given the contingency and given the additional contingency in the furniture, fixture, and equipment budget and construction professional services budget. So I wanted to put that out there on the record. And I also really wanted to kind of expand on Andrea's point regarding Clark Sullivan and the repeat customer subcontractor team. We have a large number of very critical subcontractors that make up the construction team who are essentially repeat customers. They are contractors doing essentially the same scope of work on our two existing middle schools. They're bringing that institutional knowledge with them, with those lessons learned, onto this project. Earlier on the consent agenda, this board recommended a professional services agreement with Core Construction to help augment our construction staff in the field, bringing with them the institutional knowledge that they've acquired over the last 18 months planning and building the two middle schools under construction right now. Of course, our architect team and our in-house team. I really feel strong about, I feel very positive about the strength of the team that we're bringing to bear on this particular challenge. And, everyone, I think, will acknowledge that this is going to be a challenging project, both construction scope-wise and schedule-wise. But if there was ever really a team ready to tackle this challenge, I feel like we're bringing the right team to the plate in this instance, and for very, very good reason, right? That's my third bullet here, is that we're embarking on a rezoning process as we speak to analyze and accommodate the capacity that this school is going to provide. And as with our middle schools, as you guys have seen, it's expansive, and it's going to touch a large number of students in a very, very positive way. And we think that's, extremely important. So this is kind of how it lays out for us. This is our aggressive schedule that we are going to hit the ground running on as soon as we get those contracts signed. Like, no joke, we're going to start moving dirt in February. But we're going to hit these milestones, and weather's going to be a challenge, just like all construction projects, but we've got that factored in, and we've got the right team to meet these challenges. And again, open for that August 2020 milestone to bring it to our students. So that's the plan. It's going to be a fantastic school, really proud of the site as well. I think everyone's going to see the value when it's all said and done of how we integrated this into the community. And we've got some obstacles to overcome in between now and August 2020, but that's what we do. And we've got the right team to do it. And we're here today to present the recommendation that you see here. That's all we have. Open it up to any questions.
Okay,
Thank you.
questions, Dr. Taylor?
I'm just prepared to make a motion.
Oh,
Madam
well,
President.
let's see if there are comments or questions first, other than I think all of us would say, what an amazing crew we have working on building our new schools. Thank you both. Thank you, everybody that is behind you, literally and figuratively, to make all of this happen. It's so impressive what's being done by this district. So thank you so much for that. Comments, questions? Trustee Caudill.
Yeah, is it up to the school district or Clark and Sullivan to ensure that the prevailing wage laws are being followed?
Both, basically. I mean, the contractor's responsible, and we review and, I guess, QC the payroll as well. So there's oversight by the school district, but primarily the responsibility of the contractor.
Thank you.
Okay. Trustee Minetto.
So, as you and I have discussed, my issue is with the general use restrooms. The floor plan for this is pretty much said and done, right?
It is. I mean, there's
okay. That's
minor.
what I want to know.
Thank you.
And just to confirm, there was a very lengthy public process of developing the specifications for all of the facilities, academic as well as all of the facilities that are common areas, et cetera. So we had a lot of public input, a lot of public discussion, and then the board did adopt educational specifications for middle schools, for elementary schools, for the district going forward. So we had architectural contracts let, and the architects designed those schools based on the educational or the construction specifications. And we did have really some of the finest educational architects in the country helping us to look at what are the best practices all over the country for building the best schools we could. So I think, Trustee Kelly, you were next.
And I was just going to ask Trustee Taylor, since this school is in my district, most of those 20 schools are in my district, if I could make the motion, if that was okay?
Absolutely not. Go right ahead, Trustee
I
Kelly.
could just not call on her. So, any other questions or comments? Is there anything you would like to say? We'd love to hear from you from Clark and Sullivan if there's anything you'd like to say. Okay. I got this from got this and then this. So that was what he had to say. Okay. If there are, yes, Trustee Caudill.
Yeah, it's more of a comment and a question. I know we still hear it in the community, the comparison to the cost of this versus the cost of schools that were built 10 plus years ago. And, for the communities, for public record, to ensure that taxpayer money is extremely important to spend wisely. It's the strong economy is what's driving costs, the supply and demand being what it is, and that the cost of the school is as low as it can be. And I know that's just a general comment, but I still hear it and try to assure people that there is no waste in this. This is what the construction costs are nowadays versus when a school was built 10 plus years ago. So unfortunately we still hear it, so I think it's important to say on the record that this is what it is, and if we could drive the cost lower, we would, but unfortunately, this was what the low bid was.
And I think I would ask you, Adam, if you want to add anything to that. We still continue to look for value engineering, and this school is benefiting from value engineering that is being done on Desert Skies and Sky Ranch. Looking at, we've actually saved, I think, what was it, $2 million something from cost that we can value engineer out of the newer school. Is that something that you can comment on for the record, Adam?
Well, there's certainly always lessons learned taking place, value engineering, if I had it to do over again, how would I do it again differently, more efficiently? I mean, that's the type of little incremental improvements that these repeat customers are going to be bringing to this team to help us execute this particular one that much more efficiently and with that much higher quality. The truth of the matter is that those efficiencies were likely considered to a certain degree when those bids, those subcontractor quotes were submitted. It was a low bid process, and this is what the market bore. We have gone into great detail at times about, what the market conditions are and why these costs are what they are. I won't, belabor that at this time, but I would circle back to really the WC1 funding stream that has put us in a position to be able to do this and is somewhat flexible with the economy, and that as market conditions rise, the revenues also are increasing. There was a tremendous value engineering exercise that was undertaken before the current 2 middle schools were put out to contract. That is a continuous process for us. We see this coming in at this price, approximately, we saw a little bit higher than engineer's estimate, but within the range that we anticipated that the market would escalate. So things are hot right now. We feel excellent about the team and the the efficiency and value we're going to bring to this particular project, and know that with the funding source that we have, we're able to still proceed with these projects as demand dictates. Really, is what's driving this, is the student population and the overcrowding relief that's needed.
And we did have, as you referenced, we did have a very robust process of bringing in national experts to evaluate all the component parts that go into the cost of building a new school, and really certainly gave me a lot of reassurance that this is absolutely the going rate for doing this kind of work. And again, we will continue to work with the contractors to value engineer those projects. Trustee Taylor, who is not going to make a motion?
I am not going to make a motion, but I did just wanted to add to Trustee Caudill's comments that a big driving factor is labor. Just the cost of labor. It is certainly a booming economy and so on, but because, just as you mentioned earlier, I want that to be a part of the comments that you made, because I know you made it for the public, and the public should also consider the fact that the labor is just driving the prices, and that's why this was the low bid.
And that labor is also, again, with 91% being local subcontractors, as you said in your presentation, creating good jobs for for folks that are here locally. So all that money goes back into our local economy through purchase of supplies and labor that good working people can put to use. So if there are no further questions or comments, I'll call on Trustee Kelly.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the Board of Trustees awards bid 11365A, construction of new Arrow Creek Middle School, to Clark Sullivan Construction for $73,440,220.
I second. And before we vote, is there any public comment on this item? No. Okay. I just wanted to make sure that you might be here at that opportunity. So we have a motion by Trustee Kelly. Motion by Trustee Kelly and a second by Trustee Dr. Taylor. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Congratulations. Thank you, staff. Okay, building schools. And we don't know when the groundbreaking will be yet. I know you'll keep us posted. St. Patrick's Day? Okay, I take that back. Take that back. No, it's not committed to. Irene, your blood pressure can go back into normal range. Oh, but it is very exciting, and of course we don't want to delay because we have an aggressive schedule. So thank you all so much for the work. Okay, let's quickly do board reports. If any of our trustees have reports to make about the great things they've been doing. Trustee Minetto, please go first.
I met with the Student Advisory Board last week, and thank goodness JJ was there because they asked me a question. I'm like, But it was just so neat. They're wonderful kids. We just need to get more kids involved. It was just wonderful.
They are pretty fantastic. Okay. Trustee Kelly, you don't have anything new going on in your life, so.
No, just Team Kelly has been increased by 1.
All right. Trustee Caudill, do you have any?
Yeah, I attended a basketball game on Friday between Spanish Springs and Reno, so it was great to see the public come out with school pride. We had good representation from both schools. And also, I think the budget forums have been going great so far. We just need more people to come and let their voices be heard. Staff come out on Thursday because it's important decisions that have to be made in the coming weeks and months.
Great, thank you. Yes, Trustee Dr. Taylor?
Just, I got a chance to join some of my colleagues in receiving a check
Yes, you did.
from NV Energy for the tremendous efforts that are being done by the district. This had to do with our lighting, and they said there are more checks to come, 258,000 and some change at McQueen High School. Met a great student, great teacher, and so it's just great to be able to be a part of being a part of our footprint and making our footprint a little bit smaller and saving money.
And thank you to Dr. Geddes, who's our sustainability
Yes.
manager, and the team that works on finding ways that we can save money. That $250,000 was a rebate for some of our investments in sustainability projects and conservation. So very exciting. Trustee Calvert. Okay. Vice President Raymond.
I'll just add that Nevada Association of School Board training that was this weekend was wonderful, and our amazing legal counsel and his transitioning slides and his PowerPoint were the star of the show. But a close second was the presentation on school funding and just the complexities, as always, that brings along with it, but also kind of what we're looking at this legislative session as possibilities. And it was just, I thought, a very well done program, very informative, and always learn more. Even if it's repeat, it just sinks in a little more every time I hear it. So I thank them for the work they do.
And I want to thank Vice President Raymond for her service on the Nevada Association of School Boards Executive Committee, because it's a lot of work, and the NASB just lost their newly hired executive director. So there's a lot of work that she's doing, a lot of extra work on our behalf and on behalf of the whole state. So thank you very much for that. I've had a busy couple of weeks. School visits today at Desert Heights Elementary School and Huffaker Elementary School with Vice President Raymond. We were at SWOPE yesterday with a leadership class that was great, asked wonderful questions, and those are really fun. And fellow trustees, Trustee Minetto and Trustee Kelly and Trustee Caudill, along with Vice President Raymond and I were at that Nevada Association of School Boards training. That was excellent. I'm also a representative on the Child Advocacy Center board, and it's a wonderful project. And if any of you have questions about that, I did attend that meeting. Also, as a representative of the district, I attended the Alliance Business Update provided by the Chamber of Commerce and EDAWN and others, and very informative. Really appreciated that. Also had a great time at the MLK dinner with Trustee Taylor and Trustee Caudill and Trustee Raymond. And let's see. Oh, I also got to attend with Superintendent Davis and with Wooster Principal Leah Kusher, the Civil Discourse Dinner put on by the Gwynn Center and Teach Plus in Las Vegas on it was how can we have civil discourse about education funding, and had the opportunity to sit with the Senate Education Committee Chair Senator Mo Dennis, so that was wonderful. And then I was really honored to get to be the guest of Jill Tolles for the State of the State address, and also sat with, she had Senator Heidi Gansert there. But the big wonderful thing was I got to sit with former Lieutenant Governor Sue Wagner, and actually got to be her chauffeur to the State of the State. But what an icon, what a tremendous treasure she is to the state of Nevada. So that was great. So lots of good things going on, and we really appreciate all the hard work of our trustees out there in our schools and with our students and with our teachers. So thank you for that. Superintendent report.
So I'll add with the civil discourse dinner. What's going to be exciting is that we're going to host in Reno in March. And so we'll try to get you an invite. It was it was truly civil discourse, but
Some was less civil than others at our table.
There's some groups, but I think it's great because you have varying opinions. And so definitely we'll make sure you get that information. The RFP for health insurance closed tomorrow. That's pretty big. And the committee to begin the meeting on Thursday. So that's very important for us. We're building schools, so that means we got to hire principals, and so we have a lot going on right now. We'll have principals for Bohatch and Arrow Creek probably in the next couple of weeks. I saw that schedule. The schedule is just tight. So we have lots going on with acceleration zones. And then we've been training on teams, our principals and central service and teachers, and the superintendent who is struggling also, but it's a great platform as we do our work around digital days. I might put y'all on teams too, put the board on teams. That would be pretty hilarious. But good work going on in our district, and thank you to everybody that's doing that work. We continue to work and celebrate the 8,000 employees who do amazing things for kids every day in our district.
Okay, great. Okay, do we have any future agenda item requests at this time? Trustee Cotto.
Yeah, this may have already been done, but I've only been here for about a month. The governor's school safety task force report, I noticed that we received a link to it. Is it possible to get maybe a presentation on it, on what's in the report, so the community can see it, and maybe an outlook to what we can maybe expect in the coming months in the legislative session?
Great idea. That'd be good. Okay. Any others? Okay. Great. All right. Is there any final public comment? Okay. Hearing none. Our next meeting will be Tuesday, February 12th for a regular meeting. We will have a policy committee meeting here on February 5th and a spotlight on success meeting for board members to attend, hopefully, that night. And we have a work session that's on the calendar for February 8th, and that is a public meeting. So, okay. And with that, we will be adjourned. Thank you.